Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a special Super Bowl Sunday edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobler, of course.
Hello.
Hello. Russell, got a software update earlier in the day, and now it's making his microphone not work, so he's on the computer mic for today.
It's every time we get the mic worked out, something else happens.
Yeah.
Never the camera. It's never any visual problems. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm cursed with the mics. I've had 2 Shure mics break. 2.
Yeah. Well, I think this is your operating system. I think this is the Windows is the problem,
Well,
to Bill Gates' product.
I took a software update, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the guy I want in charge of my health care.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. The vaccine's the first thing that guy ever made that works perfectly, That works great, obviously. We're not saying anything about that. But everything else the guy's ever made doesn't work right.
Effective.
Yeah, nothing besides that works the way as advertised. Nothing. How do you like that?
That vaccine, it stops at each vaccinated person.
That's right. Exactly. Or whatever the party line is nowadays. Anyway, let's get started here. We want to waste no time. First of all, I should waste no time introducing Jake in the booth today. Jake is not taking off for Super Bowl Sunday, so thanks, Jake. Appreciate that for being here. Thumbs up for Jake in the chat. Baby. Round of applause for Jake in the chat working on Super Bowl Sunday. We also want to introduce a very special guest of ours. You all know who she is, former Seattle City Council member and founding organizer of Workers Strike Back, whose conference is coming up in just 2 weekends from now. That is not what we're here to talk about today, oddly enough. We're here to talk about something very urgent. We're happy to have her on. As always, please welcome our friend Kshama Sawant to the program. Kshama, good to see you.
Good to see you all, too. Thank you so much for having me.
Kshama.
Of course. In fact, it's always good to see you, but we were planning on having you, we still do plan on having you back in about a week or so anyway to talk about Workers Strike Back. So it's kind of unfortunate that we had to book this interview with you today because we're talking about something that kind of came up out of nowhere that is affecting you and that does have obvious political implications. So, Russell, why don't you take this away? You have this prepped here.
All right, so you have been turned down for a visa 3 times now. So you finally went to the consulate to demand an answer for why you didn't get your visa. What happened?
So you're right, Russell. I was denied a visa or my application for visa was denied in May of 2024. And then again, I applied in June. That was also denied both times. There was no explanation whatsoever about why the application was rejected. The email just says rejected, one word. And so after that,
do you have dual citizenship? What's your?
I don't. Often with neocolonial nations, the U.S. does not have dual citizenship agreement. So when I took my U.S. citizenship, I surrendered my Indian citizenship. And so I get a visa every time I go. And my husband and I have visited India many times on such a visa, travel visa. But this time I was rejected twice. And to be honest, it wasn't a surprise to us because we expected that as soon as I left office, that they would dare to retaliate against me in that way, because I'm not the first person. It has happened to a lot of people, actually. The Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have documented that this is the denial of a visa or rejection or revoking of long-term visas, revoking of something called the Overseas Citizen of India status, that has been used as systematically as a weapon of political retaliation against critics of the Modi government. And I think they have found out that this is, at least to their knowledge, it has happened to at least 100 people. Many of them are public figures who have criticized the Modi regime. But I also know, just informally from the Indian community here, that just ordinary people who have posted something critical on their social media have also been retaliated against. And so after all of that, those two rejections, my husband and I applied for another avenue, which is granted by the Indian government overall. That's called the emergency visa, and of course, the emergency has to be documented, and and there is an emergency in my family, which is my mother is 82 years old. She's very sick, and she really desperately wants to see me and my husband both. And so we, furnished her doctor's letter and all of that. The emergency visa is supposed to be granted within 2 days or so, and we didn't hear back for over 3 weeks. And actually, Russell, just to clarify, we went to the consulate that day because they called us in the morning saying, please bring your passports for further visa processing. And then we go there, we give them our passports, they make us wait there for no reason at all. And actually, I think I know the reason they did it. I can bring it up later. But ultimately, they give us both our passports back, but only Calvin, my husband, has his passport. I'm not given a passport. And that consular officer, he actually told us that the reason I was not given a passport is that I am on the quote unquote, the reject list. But they didn't explain why my name is on the reject list. But he said 3 times, there is a reject list and your name is on the reject list. And that's why we demanded an explanation from them. Why is my name on this reject list?
And they held your passport?
No, they gave our passports back. We made it very clear we're not going to let them hold our passports back. I mean, they are U.S. passports. It would be, they would be criminally liable for it if they held it. But I think, it is really scandalous what is happening, because first of all, the consulate officer, I don't think he was supposed to reveal that there is a reject list. So he's probably going to get in trouble. I mean, but that's his problem. But it is scandalous that they have a reject list. Not that it's surprising to us. We know that people are being blacklisted just for criticizing the Modi government, and others like me have been prohibited from visiting India, even though they have ailing parents, parents in sick health.
This is a little off topic, but Tulsi Gabbard has often been accused of having ties to the Modi government. Do you have any comment on that?
I think, first of all, Tulsi Gabbard is a classic example of somebody who is just a careerist. She doesn't have any problem jumping ship from one thing to another, using any whatever popular cause of the day to further her own interests. So I would really urge people to not have any illusions in people like her. And in reality, she is now part of the Trump administration, and the Trump regime is very friendly to the Modi regime. There is no question about that. But it also should be clarified that this goes beyond the Republican Party. Obviously, the Trump right wing has a lot in common with the Modi right wing. They're both reactionary, right wing, fundamentalist type of ideologies that have points of connection. But we should not be under any illusion that it is just Trump. In fact, the Biden administration made it very clear that in U.S. capitalism's agenda, sort of competition with the China and Russia-led bloc, that they were courting the Modi administration in a big way. And in fact, in June 2023, Modi was welcomed by the Biden administration, and they hosted this grand White House dinner. And the invitee list, the guest list of that dinner was revealing as a who's who of Indian and US elite. Several Indian billionaires, including Mukesh Ambani, who is Asia's richest person and the world's 13th richest person. Also, Apple CEO Tim Cook, Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. So in both countries, the sitting administration, whether it is Democrat or Republican here and the Modi administration there, they're both friends of the billionaire class. And one of the things we're seeing is retaliation against dissent. It is also attacks on protest movements. We've seen Trump also sort of, go after immigrant communities. We saw the deportation of Indians in shackles, which is just, again, another scandalous thing. And also, we've seen the executive order from Trump against student protest movements who are speaking up against the genocide in Gaza. So I think all of these things are connected.
I mean, you really became a lightning rod. I mean, when you were elected to the Seattle City Council, as soon as you started, putting wins on the board for working people, I remember back even in 2013, hearing about you because of that. Now, because of the media I consumed, I heard about you in a positive light, but you have kind of been a lightning rod. You've been this target of attacks of, national right-wing media since you became a political figure on the Seattle City Council, and this just to me seems like an extension of that. Now you've spoken against Modi, but also just your success as a socialist politician. Do you think that has what difference did you see in terms of just getting that national spotlight put on you, even though you were just one member of a city council in Seattle?
You're right. I mean, if you look at it just from a technical standpoint and a technocratic view, a seat on the city council of one city is really not something that rises to any kind of prominence. You have Pramila Jayapal, who's a Congress member, Ro Khanna, these are all Indian Americans like myself who are in a much more prominent position. However, I think it really comes down to what is it that elected representatives do with their office. I mean, so you have Jayapal and Khanna having these prominent positions, just like Bernie Sanders and AOC. And what have they done with their positions? They are so-called progressives. AOC even is the leader of the so-called squad, which is now completely discredited. They all have uncritically supported the Biden candidacy and then Kamala Harris. They didn't really fight against the breaking of the railroad worker strike. They have done nothing whatsoever in order to hold, for example, the Biden administration to account in the betraying on all the promises, $15 an hour, canceling student debt, the public health care option. And if you contrast their congressional and Senate positions, which they could do a lot of, they have a national platform. They could be calling for mass movements on Medicare for all, or on $15 an hour, or ending the genocide in Gaza, ending US military funding absolutely permanently for the Israeli state. They have done none of that, whereas our one city council position, look at the contrast with which we have used it. We fought for and won the $15 an hour minimum wage, which helped other cities, movements in other cities win it. And we, as part of that battle, we also won a crucial thing, which is inflation adjustment for that wage. So starting January this year, Seattle's minimum wage is $20.76, which is by far the highest minimum wage. You have seen nothing on part of any of these other prominent politicians. And then similarly, we won the Amazon tax, and we actually have their track record of being the only elected office that actually took on Jeff Bezos and Amazon and defeated them multiple times. We defeated them in winning the Amazon tax itself, which raised, by the way, just last year, our city's Amazon tax raised over $450 million for affordable housing. That's what you can do with real fighting movements. But even before that, we defeated Jeff Bezos and Amazon and the Chamber of Commerce in our 2019 election when they threw in millions of dollars to defeat me and other progressive candidates, and we were able to withstand and defeat them in turn because we had a fighting movement on our hands.
Now, what is it about Modi's government? What policies does he have? You mentioned anti-Muslim, stances. So what kinds of things? Because I think for the most part, India is really not covered very much in America. Even people who cover a lot of foreign policy, India almost never discussed. So what is it about his government that you're opposed to?
So overall, the Modi administration and his party, the Bharatiya Janata Party or the BJP, they are, and for a long time, this is not a new thing, they have been rooted in deeply reactionary, right-wing Hindu fundamentalist ideology, which is by definition, just by its very nature, is extremely opposed to Muslims and the oppressed caste people. And so they are there's a lot of documentation within India about just extreme violence being in the name of Hindu fundamentalism being enacted against the Muslim community, especially the targeting of Muslim activists who are opposing all of these actions, and also tremendous, just unspeakable violence against oppressed caste people, because the caste system is a real scourge that needs to be ended in the Indian South Asian context. But specifically, if you look at what's happened from the first moment that Modi came to power as prime minister, that was way back in 2014. It's been a whole decade now, and that itself we need to examine. How is it that Modi keeps winning elections? But anyway, after he came to power, one of the first things that they did was establish this what was so-called a Citizenship Amendment Act and a National Registry of Citizenship, which all sounds really nice, but in reality what it is and I'm quoting the Amnesty International now, it said it's a bigoted law that legitimizes discrimination on the basis of religion and should never have been enacted in the first place. And that's the quote from Amnesty. But to be more specific, what this law actually does is it opens up sort of legal avenue for targeting of Muslims. It's a sort of a legalized Islamophobia, if you will, but it specifically targets poor people, so millions upon millions of poor people especially, and working people. It can be used to attack working people as a whole, and also oppressed caste people. So my office, what we did in February of 2020 is we brought forward a resolution condemning CANRC. So it's a resolution in the sense that we don't have a jurisdiction to stop it actually, because we're not in India, right. But it was powerful because it was the first condemnation. Again, my point is none of these prominent politicians did anything about it. We were the first ones to condemn it. And it was an all-out fight here in the Seattle City Hall was packed with people who supported the resolution I brought forward, and also the Modi supporters here, who are in the form of many organizations like the Hindu American Foundation and Coalition of Hindus of North America. These are all deeply fundamentalist organizations. And we should remember, just like with the Trump administration, the right-wing ideology obviously is extremely dangerous, but it is very much connected to the attack by billionaires on working people. And in India, we're talking about hundreds of millions of working and poor people. And also the fact that the Modi regime has been able to sustain, despite actually periods of anger and revolt against them, including general strikes, one of which I was personally there for actually, because I was visiting my family at that time. The reason they have survived is the same reason that Trump 2.0 is happening. It's because of the complete betrayals by, like in the US, by the Democratic Party. And in India, it's the complete ineffectiveness of the opposition parties to provide any alternative to working people.
Well, you in Seattle, this was one of the, toward the end of your tenure. In 2023, you became the first city to ban caste discrimination in Seattle. So I can't imagine, they were too happy about that.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, it was very openly opposed by these Modi proxies in the United States. And also, furthermore, actually, another very prominent organization that publicly opposed our legislation to ban caste discrimination was something called the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. That's like saying it translates into World Hindu Organization or Confederation. That is a very prominent part of the whole Hindu fundamentalist, what it's called is a Sangh Parivar, which means that it's a family of the Hindu fundamentalist organizations in India, and Vishwa Hindu Parishad, or VHP, is a very prominent part of that. So they openly opposed it. And there's no doubt in my mind that the fact that the Modi administration is blacklisting me and preventing me from visiting my mother and using that as political retaliation has everything to do with both these things, both the CA&RC resolution condemning those laws and also the caste discrimination bill. But I'll just say that I strongly suspect that the Modi administration didn't dare to retaliate in this overt way against me while I was in office. Right. They are going after me because they think that it will be a much less backlash now that I don't hold actual elected office. And that's why I should emphasize that we cannot fight this by just sort of at an individual level. This has to be a movement, because I am far from the only one that's targeted. And so we are hoping, we are launching a protest actually outside the Indian consulate in Seattle on Thursday, February 20th at 4 p.m. So if any of your viewers who are in Seattle, if you will join us, it'll be very important, because it's a protest to fight Modi and Trump and the billionaire class.
It seems like, because I was in India about 2 years ago this time. There is a real naivety and romanticization about Indian culture in America, because one of the things that really struck me when I read stories about the caste system legislation was how much resistance you were getting from upper caste Indians. There's this very romantic vision of India as this land of impoverished, wandering mendicants and Gandhi, whose legacy obviously is more complicated than usually presented. I think that's part of why people aren't as aware of how much conflict there is in India and how much injustice. I think it flies in the face of a lot of the way we've been taught to think about India.
I definitely think you're right. There is a romanticizing of neo-colonial nations in general. And yes, specifically, there is a lot of romanticized notions about India. And there is overall, yes, in the West, you do see sort of a romanticizing of poverty. Although I will say, right. If you are poor, and I don't care whether you're poor in the United States or India or anywhere else, if you're poor, you know that those romanticized notions are complete bullshit, because actual poverty is completely devastating. It is horrific. And that's why, as a socialist, we're fighting against all of that, to end poverty, which will not happen on the basis of capitalism. But to address the other aspect of what you're saying, why is it that people are not aware of the tremendous issues that exist in India, and also that there is a real resistance to Hindu fundamentalism, to the domination of the billionaire class? There is a real anger against poverty. There is a serious simmering discontent among young people in India. I mean, my contention is that hundreds of millions of people, especially young people, could be organized today if there was any political organization worth the measure, which we don't have, unfortunately, that could unite people across caste, across gender, across regional divides, which there's a lot of regional divide that is exploited by the Indian ruling class, not just by the Modi administration, but by ruling parties in general. Ethnic and language and caste and religion differences are exploited, just like the Trump administration and frankly the Democratic Party also do the billionaires' bidding of divide and conquer across, whether you are immigrant or you are US born and so on and so forth. There's so many divide and conquer strategies that are used by the ruling class on every continent in the world. But just to address, why is it that Americans are not aware? The biggest reason is that the same reason that the media, the vast majority of the media, especially the corporate media, don't report on working class issues in the United States. The same reason they don't report on these issues from India either, because, the capitalist class, they may have competition amongst each other within, at their own realm, but in reality, they are very much united in their agenda of exploiting working people, no matter what their religion or caste or nationality is. And so the corporate media in the United States very much wants to keep any negative media, negative news, and what working people actually feel in India from the years of working people in the United States. I mean, the last message that the capitalist class wants to send is of international working class unity. They don't want that. They want working people in the US to hate Mexican workers or Latino workers or Indian workers. They want to make it about all those clashes, because then working people are busy fighting amongst each other and not understanding that your enemy is the billionaire class. I really appreciated the segment you did where you pointed out the complete dishonesty of Elon Musk, sharing that particular tweet the divide is. Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Then you're going to love the rest of this show if you stick around.
That has 5,000 views. I guess you watched it 4,000 times. I guess that explains why that was a success. Usually those kinds of segments don't do that well, but I guess Kshama watched it on repeat. Boosted our numbers.
Well, you know what it is. There's a shift now, because now Elon is running the country. So there's going to be more interest in videos like that. In the past, we used to call out Elon before Trump won the election, and those videos would almost always tank. Yeah. Nobody cared. Now there's more interest. All
right, so why don't we show you a video, because you guys posted a video to Workers Strike Back that shows a sit-in because you had some supporters of yours come and rally to your defense. So this was taken off of your website, so forgive folks, there's a pause icon in the middle of this that I couldn't get to go away, but I wanted to download the video. So why don't you set up what we're about to see here, because this went down, I guess, was this at the consulate? Was this at the airport? Where was this?
It was at the Indian consulate in Seattle, inside the office. And like I said, we didn't go there with the intention of carrying out civil disobedience, but we went because they called my husband and me, bring your passports for further visa processing is what they said. And then when they denied me and they admitted that there is a reject list and I'm on that reject list, we refused to leave until they gave us an explanation. And of course, what happened was when my husband and I, initially it was just the two of us, when we said, no, we are not leaving until you give us an explanation, we've been given enough a runaround. We've come to the consulate so many times. They refused to give us an answer, obviously. But at the same time, they also gathered more and more people from wherever, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where their offices are. And it started to become really intimidating for us. We really were concerned for our safety. And so then we asked other Workers Strike Back members to join us, to be there with us.
Okay, so let's take a look at this.
We have a right to record. We have a right to record. She's being denied a visa in retaliation.
It is not illegal. You're stating as a business that is prohibited by law. I have a legal right to record. You do not have a right to put your hands on me.
What kind of government denies someone a visa to see their mother? What kind of government retaliates against someone simply for criticizing it and refusing them 3 times to grant them a visa because of criticism of that government? What kind of reactionary government operates in this way? The same reactionary government that has video on this screen the whole time we were sitting here showing Trump shaking hands with Modi. That's what kind of government this is.
Mm-hmm. And this is an attack not just on Kshama, on the whole movement.
Do you know entering in this one is a crime?
Entering into the building is a crime?
Yeah. You know?
How many people enter this building every day?
Not forcibly, they came through the door.
Why? This is the office hour are closed. Why they came here?
Because you are denying Kshama a visa to see her mother.
You can't enter people like this. You all these people and you entering
your
in
big
this
concern is several people doing civil disobedience. That's your big concern.
Our
concern is the right-wing, dangerous Modi government, which has carried out horrific policies against the farmers of India, against Muslims in India, against Dalits in India. People tried to forcibly take away their phones.
And my phone was forcibly attempted to be taken away from me.
You did touch us. You grabbed us.
You assaulted people and we have it on video.
We do not touch anyone. We try to physically restrain.
That's true, but you couldn't take my phone.
Out of the office, please. You can go and.
Oh, so that's,
out of
or that's,
office.
and that's your understanding of the Indian Revolution, that it was always, that all of the civil disobedience in the Indian Revolution
we
was
have
done
to-
in a way that was
we have
acceptable
to
to the
close
British
our
government,
office.
acceptable to British colonialism. This is how, this is your understanding how the Indian Revolution
If
was
it is
won.
acceptable, then
Was
it's not
all-
civil
you think
disobedience.
nobody,
My mother is very ill. She is 82 years old. My visa has been rejected 3 times without explanation. I was just told by your fellow officer that I am on a reject list. All we are asking for is an explanation for why my visa has been rejected 3 times. What are you afraid of? Is the Modi regime so weak that they are afraid to give an 82-year-old woman an explanation as to why she cannot see her daughter? Whoa, what are you doing?
Oh my God. Hey! Hey!
No, stop.
What is it doing?
Are you serious?
Holy shit. What the?
Okay, so it's a
So
little unclear
what's
what
happening
happened
at the end there?
Yeah,
What's
what
happening?
happened at the end there? It was a little unclear.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The part of the problem was that they were actually snatching the phones from our hands, and so it was hard for us to record exactly in a very clear manner.
Yeah, sure.
But what was happening was this. So yes, we did stage a civil disobedience, and can I just say sorry for interjecting this, but I can't help it. Can I just say, look at the contrast between this and what the Democrats like Chuck Schumer and Ilhan Omar did in relation to USA, and I have to say,
we just said that the other day. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Thank
exactly.
you for your
That's what-
service.
Thank you for your service. Jim.
Exactly. I have to say I really appreciated your segment on that. That is not a protest. That is not civil disobedience. That is, that really reveals them as part of the establishment, really.
Right.
Whereas our action was actual civil disobedience, where peaceful civil disobedience, where we didn't do anything. All we were doing was refusing to leave because we had a demand, and they were the ones actually, even before the last moment happened, which I'll explain in a second, they were the security guys of the consulate. So these are consulate employees. These are Modi employees. They were literally touching worker strike back members, shoving them, body checking them, trying to get their phones. I mean, it's incredible to see the way they were acting. But the last thing was just stunning. So what happened was we had worker strike back members on the street, because that's how organized we are. And they had the consulate staff had been threatening to call the police on us. They didn't dare. Ultimately, they did call the police because our members downstairs said, hey, there are 3 cop cars here. And so we decided to leave because, we wanted to, we have our own strategy and tactics of how we carry out civil disobedience. We didn't want to extend it at that moment. So when we heard that the police were there, we just wanted to quietly leave. And keep in mind that as we were quietly leaving, that was exactly what the consulate staff were telling us to do, which is leave. So we were doing what they were asking us to do, which is leave. And what happened was that as we were trying to leave, and I was holding open the door of the stairwell because they turn off the elevators, this is just draconian, the whole way they even run the building. So I was opening the stairwell door for us to go downstairs, and some of us had already left to go, and they were on the stairwell, and that's the part you saw from the stairwell. One of the security guys, he actually, of the consulate, this is not the police, it's the consulate staff, who grabbed at me to prevent me from opening the door and continued grabbing at me to shut the door. And he was clearly trying to entrap me and possibly others into staying there, probably with the hope that the police would arrest us. I mean, I don't see any other explanation. If you're asking us
Why
to leave,
do that?
Yeah, if you want us to end our civil disobedience and we are doing precisely that, why would you stop us? I mean, this is honestly, I'm not surprised by anything that the Modi regime does, but that was really shocking. It is gangster-like behavior for them to literally grab at me like that. And also at there was another worker strike by member that they grabbed with they grabbed her arms, both her arms, and they took her, she was the one who was recording this. They took her phone and the phone fell down in the scuffle, and they engaged in a further scuffle with her, trying to snatch the phone. And then they were restricting me and another member from leaving. And so we had to literally push back on them in order to leave. I mean, it's just really beyond everything.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous situation because they have diplomatic immunity, right?
I don't
pretty
think
much
so,
do
no.
anything. No.
No, I don't think they have diplomatic immunity in the consulate. But what they do have is a real sense of political emboldening, that they feel emboldened to go after us like this. And they feel emboldened both because the Biden administration and the Democrats have already emboldened them, and that because in India, the opposition parties like the Congress Party have been completely ineffective. And they are also, let's face it, it's a similar situation like in the United States.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, they are bourgeois parties. They all represent the interests of capitalism. And so they are unwilling. It's not just that they're unable, they're unwilling to unite working people because they don't want to do that. That's not part of their agenda. And so right now in India, there's a real chill because nobody's fighting back. And it's different in the US in the sense that in India now, all the institutions and the media, they're all in lockstep with the Modi administration. And now people are scared to push back, and those who are face tremendous retaliation. I mean, literally activists' homes get bulldozed. It is, it's at a really different level. So even before Trump came, Modi was already emboldened, but I would say now there's a further clear emboldening because of that connection.
So what can people do to help?
I think it's important that people, first of all, share this video widely in your, informal WhatsApp threads or Signal threads or whatever. Make sure everybody understands it. Yeah, you can go to Worker Strike Back and find also the press statement that we released in order to explain what happened. Most importantly are two things. One is Worker Strike Back will be sharing an email through which people can join us in sending mass numbers of emails to Congress members Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, and also the local Congress member here, Adam Smith, demanding that they go after the Modi regime, and that they in turn demand that the Modi regime stop this type of retaliation against people like me and stop using visa and other means to prevent us from visiting our families. And the other important thing is, if you are in Seattle, then join us at the protest in Seattle downtown on February 20th, which is a Thursday. And,
I'm going to be there.
Yeah, Russ is going to be there because he's going in early.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for being there. And also, we have a petition online that is demanding all these things. And so if people can sign the petition, that's very crucial.
Okay, great. Well, Kshama, thanks for being with us today. Stay out of jail because we need you for the conference. So no going to jail for the next 2 weeks. You got to stay out of jail for 2 weeks. So go to workerstrikeback.org. And Kshama, our love to your mom. And we hope you do get to see her soon.
Thank you so much. I really have. You have no idea how much it means to me.
All righty. Well, we will talk to you again before the conference on this show, and then Russ will be there in person. I will send in a video, and we're going to get a super stream together for it, so we will make as much noise as we can with that. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kshama.
Kshama Sawant, everybody. Round of applause in the chat. Please go to workerstrikeback.org and find that press release, share that out, sign the petition.
Also, I can cover that protest. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Yep. That's going to be Thursday. So you are going to be, there in town. That's right. That's right. Russ is leaving. When are you leaving? You're leaving a week from tomorrow, right?
A week from tomorrow. I get in pretty early, actually.
There you go.
Here pretty early. So
beautiful. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99 super chat. Appreciate that very much. Mark Pugliese over on YouTube says, Kshama, be our mamala. Thank you, Mark Pugliese. Appreciate that very much. Eric Cousseau says, fuck scumbag douchebag Israel. Thank you, Eric Cousseau. Appreciate that very much. Hillary Hinton says, I feel we're ready to take our relationship to the next level, so I'm going to tell you dirtbags my real name. Legolas Von Pestilence. You can call me Steve. Sorry about the dirtbags thing. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that very much. Hey, folks, it is Sunday, so we do have the matinee show, but we are still doing a Q&A, before the Super Bowl. So that is on Rumble exclusively after the conclusion of the program, so we'll let you know when to switch there. But if you are a patron, a paid Substacker, or a paid Locals member, you are, of course, invited to call into the show. Abiding, hasn't Trump's Chauncey the Gardener routine taken over the Gaza Riviera in some way stifled Netanyahu resuming the bombing and sticking to the ceasefire? I don't think so. In fact, I fear, and I hope to God I'm wrong, I fear that it might have the opposite effect, because if they can't get any of the neighboring Arab states to take Palestinians in, and or the Palestinians refuse to leave, at that point, they're not incentivized to keep the ceasefire going. At that point, they're incentivized to start again. And the really horrible thing about this is that now, because they have repopulated back into the north, now they're more vulnerable if and when the ceasefire does fall apart, right? Because now they're back home. They're spread out. They're in these cities again. So it could be even worse. And I hate to say that.
Exactly what they did.
Exactly. They could just do the same thing over again, and it could be just as bad, if not worse, than last time. So, no, I am not optimistic on that front. Thank you for the question, though. All right, folks, we are going to move right along. So I mentioned in the last show that we might want to do a little segment about FDR, a very short one, because we mentioned, over the course of the last few shows, how, this incursion, or this offensive, I should say, this onslaught against the administrative state represents certainly a breakdown in democratic norms. And the Democrats like to fret about democracy, totally not understanding their role in getting us to where we are now. And I mentioned that FDR talked about this. Now, I misremembered this exact piece of sound, because I was thinking of this piece of sound, and I said this was in the For Freedom speech, which it's not. The For Freedom speech is thematically very similar to this, so you should check that out as well. But this is some sound from a fireside chat on April 14th of 1938.
This cleared copyright?
What's that?
Cleared copyright?
Yeah, the fireside chat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get screwed by the fireside chat, wherever that is. But this is a fireside chat from April 14th, 1938. And in this piece of sound, before the passage that we are about to play, FDR outlines a sort of 5-point economic plan. He's asking for more congressional spending, basically some more New Deal type of congressional spending. And he mentions here that he asks for this spending not just to economically empower the people, but to keep the people in the country free and democratic. And I want you to listen to this. It's about 3 minutes, and tell me this does not describe exactly where we are now and what has just happened. So this is pretty good stuff.
In recommending this program, I am thinking not only of the immediate economic needs of the people of the nation, but also of their personal liberties, the most precious possession of all Americans. I am thinking of our democracy. I am thinking of the recent trend in other parts of the world away from the democratic ideal. Democracy has disappeared in several other great nations, disappeared not because the people of those nations disliked democracy, but because they had grown tired of unemployment and insecurity, of seeing their children hungry, while they sat helpless in the face of government confusion, government weakness through lack of leadership in government. Finally, in desperation, they chose to sacrifice liberty in the hope of getting something to eat. We in America know that our own democratic institutions can be preserved and made to work. But in order to preserve them, we need to act together, to meet the problems of the nation boldly, and to prove that the practical operation of democratic government is equal to the task of protecting the security of the people. Not only our future economic soundness, but the very soundness of our democratic institutions depends on the determination of our government to give employment to idle men. The people of America are in agreement in defending their liberties at any cost, and the first line of that defense lies in the protection of economic security.
The first line in that defense of liberty lies in the protection of economic security. So many lines here that just apply so perfectly. We got a little more.
Your government, seeking to protect democracy, must prove that government is stronger than the forces of business depression. History proves that dictatorships do not grow out of strong and successful governments, but out of weak and helpless governments. If by democratic methods people get a government strong enough to protect them from fear and starvation, their democracy succeeds. But if they do not, they grow impatient. Therefore, the only sure bulwark of continuing liberty is a government strong enough to protect the interests of the people, and a people strong enough and well enough informed to maintain its sovereign control over its government.
There you have it. Now, whatever you think of FDR, obviously you could argue the whole point of the New Deal was to save capitalism from itself, and you can have ideological disagreements. I certainly do. I think at this point, a lot of these social democratic reforms, as we got into, on the last show, or was that on the last show? No, we got into this on the post-duopoly show. It might be too late to implement those, right? The system may be too corrupt to be that piecemeal about it at this point. But whatever you think about FDR and that whole thing, what he's saying there is an absolutely eerie prediction of what has just happened. Now, that if democracy does not protect people's employment, if it does not keep them fed, if it does not, keep them fulfilled, they will get impatient and they will turn to fascism. And that's what he recognized happening around the world at that time. And that is what is happening right now. And the really crazy thing about this is FDR is a Democrat. And it was his brand of democratic politics that was systematically purged from the party. And anyone who has any questions about how we got here, you need only listen to that. And the people who need to hear that most are the Barack Obamas, right? Are the people now who still have something kind to say about the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bidens, the Kamala Harrises. They should have to listen to that over and over again, because that is the repudiation of the modern Democratic Party that everyone needs to hear and absorb if they have not already.
Yeah, there were two big branching off points. Obviously, there were a lot of other smaller points, but there were two major events that got us here. The first was 2008. 2008, it was not easy to get the American people to embrace fascism. Probably in no nation in history has its system of government been so much a part of its core self-image and mythology. This idea of democracy and the glory of its institutions being vitally, inextricably linked to the goodness of the nation. Right. It took a lot to get Americans to say, fuck democracy. We don't need democracy anymore. I mean, they're not saying it overtly, but they're saying it with what they're voting for. 2008, the American people really tried to put the past behind them by electing a black man. Let's face it, that was part of it. The nation wanted to show, hey, we can move past that legacy. We want to move past that legacy. But also, they thought they were embracing a return to Rooseveltian economics. I still remember the New York Times ran a caricature of Obama mashed up with FDR, with the cigarette holder, with the monocle, only it was Obama. What did he deliver? Bailed out the bankers, prosecuted the homeowners without mercy, people who had lied on their mortgages. That was a big breaking off point, because the American people and said, okay, hope and change. We're not these reactionary bigots that we're made out to be. We're good. The American people are good. We're going to elect a black man who's going to restore the soul of the nation. And he just fucked them. He just completely fucked them. Then the Bernie Sanders campaign, which I described at the time as the last exit. I knew it, that this is the last chance this country has to get off this road. I went all over Massachusetts, Super Tuesday in 2016. I would get laughed at. I would knock on doors and I would tell people, listen, Hillary Clinton is the nominee. Donald Trump is going to be the president.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. They thought that was hilarious. Hilarious. That was the last chance. You had millions of people got behind this overt, much more than Obama. Obama, in the end, never really said anything. That was just a big con job. Sanders explicitly promised a return to that.
To FDR,
Road to FDR economics, FDR kind of populism. Not only did the Democratic Party, but the entire media complex that supports it. A media complex that many of us today who are post-duopoly at one time put our trust in, like myself, emphatically demonstrated they hate those kinds of politics, those kinds of economics. They hate the people who embrace it. See, up until the Sanders campaign, they had kind of been able to get away with this idea that they support those things, but the Republicans won't allow it, right? And the country's just too conservative. That was a big mask-off moment for millions and millions of people like myself who had always bought that formulation that the Democrats want these things. It's just the Republicans. You found out that was the red pill moment. They don't want these things. And then all of a sudden, like anybody who realizes they've been conned, it becomes very obvious. Of course, they never wanted these things. Now it all makes sense. You look back at all the opportunities that they didn't take. Obama had a supermajority, right? So why is he caving to the insurance companies on single payer instead of forcing it through? All of these things all of a sudden make a lot of sense. It's that Ayn Rand line, there are no contradictions. When you think you found a contradiction, check your premises. Once your premise is that the Democratic Party is this right-wing capitalist party that is horrified by the idea of anything like Roosevelt New Deal economics, and everything all of a sudden falls into place. Everything. The way the media conducts itself, the way the Democrats conduct themselves, the way the liberal class conduct themselves, it all makes sense once you go with that basic assumption. These smug bastards ran around for decades, lecturing people if they didn't vote for that kind of politics. They had the arrogance to think that ultimately they were not going to end up paying with this. And now we're here. A lot of these people are going to wind up in jail before this is all over. Now, we might enjoy that, and we're seeing the early phases of this where, hey, these people are our enemies. Would it not give me some satisfaction to see Anthony Blinken go to prison, to see Hillary Clinton go to prison? Of course it would. Of course it would. But just because they're locking up your enemy, that doesn't mean they're your friends. And that is the problem. That's the cognitive dissonance I think a lot of people are having right now, because you're seeing a lot of people being drawn into supporting fascism just because fascism is punishing people that they don't like.
Right, and that they don't like for good reason, and who wronged them. And what is especially, I think, important about that piece of FDR sound is that FDR understood that if the country goes fascist, right, if democracy falls, it is not the fault of the people, it's the fault of the rulers. It's the fault of the leadership for not giving people a reason to invest in a democratic system. That fusion of liberty and economic empowerment is a winner. That's why he served 3 terms. That's a winner. And there was just an interview that I think Varoufakis and Hedges did where he talked about how the left doesn't talk about liberty anymore. They got to talking too much about just fairness and not about liberation. Right. So that is a lesson to be learned, but also a lesson for anyone who is still defending the modern day Democratic Party to be learned is that it was the leaders who failed the people and caused the people to turn against not just those leaders, but against the democratic system as a whole. And so if you're looking for someone to blame, it is the leadership. It is the leadership. It is not each other for that. And I think that's an important lesson of that as well. But I tweeted that out. I clipped that sound and I tweeted that. So share that if you'd like. Share that with your lib friends who still don't get it. I think that's a good foray into our politics. It doesn't necessarily represent our politics in a complete way. But that really, that is just pretty eerie to hear him talk like that almost 100 years ago and then to think of where we are right now at this moment in time. All right, Steve Bertram. We need Kshama in Congress. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Britsman, thanks for the 199. When is Russ's Eyes Wide Shut tour, a.k.a. the Torgy? There you go. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Hey, folks, we are at 2,031 in the YouTube chat. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Jenna Tills, thanks for the $5. At long last, I finally published my book of herb erotica. It's about fucking time. There you go. Get it. That's a good one. See, that combines vulgarity with dad humor. There you go, Jenna. Thank you for that very much. All right, let's do an ad read for some coffee. How about that? Do you enjoy the free speech
I'm calling.
Okay. Do you enjoy the free speech the Rumble is protecting and fighting for? Well, our show on Rumble is only possible thanks to our viewers supporting Rumble's platform by purchasing Rumble's products. So most of you drink coffee every day. I know I do. And that's why you got to try Rumble 1775 coffee. Some of the best coffee out there, and it's the same price as the coffee you buy now, only way better. Rumble 1775 coffee is free from chemicals, yet rich in flavor. This is because their beans are sourced from high-altitude farms in Bolivia, hand-picked, roasted weekly at their facility in Miami, and delivered fresh to your doorstep. And as believers in freedom, buying from Rumble helps fight back against censorious corporations like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. So join the coffee revolution and brew rebellion with Rumble 1775 coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com and use promo code STUDIO to get a free month's supply of their cognitive boosting supplement Limitless when you buy 2 bags of their coffee. That's a great deal. The supplement is worth more than the coffee itself. So go to 1775coffee.com and try their amazing coffee today with promo code STUDIO. Alrighty, Russ is back. Beautiful. All right, here we go. Let's get over here. Okay. Let's see. Oh, George, you've invented something new. A quiet call-outs. You say you disagree with someone, so you're going to give them a call. Make it as vague as possible. Don't even say who. A phone call or a call on the show? Thank you, oh George. Victor Shakapopoulos, Kshama's story proves there's a Hindu, Jewish, Zionist conspiracy running the world, and Sammy's at the center of it. Thank you, Victor. Appreciate that. Let's see. Kenman G, we need more Kshama and fewer bro morons like Joe Rogan. Well, we're getting to that in just a moment, Kenman G. Getting to that. It's going to be a fun one. Let's see. Arthur Handy, love this from FDR. The left needs to reclaim the ideas of freedom and liberty from conservatives and libertarians via economic justice for everyday people. Yes, amen. Well, that's why I initially misremembered it as the For Freedom speech. So I originally thought that was in the For Freedom speech because this, like the Four Freedoms, connects economic empowerment with liberty. Right. And so that's kind of where I had it in my mind. That's where he said those things. The Four Freedom speech is where he outlines the 4 freedoms necessary to maintain a democratic society. And it's freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and then it's freedom from want and freedom from fear. Right. So that fuses the economic message, with the anti-war message, with the civil libertarian message, with the sort of spiritual message. And I think that's a great speech. And that's why I misremembered that as being part of it, because thematically they are quite similar. But yes, I agree. The ratioing, in response to Trump's Gaza ethnic cleansing suggestion, a Saudi official proposed moving all Israelis to Greenland. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Well, didn't Russell you tweeted out, retweeted from our account, the Germany-Israel two-state solution?
Yeah. With the dividing line.
Yeah,
in the middle of
exactly.
Germany. Yeah.
That's right. That's a two-state solution I can get behind. All right, folks, let's move on. All right, this is a fun one. Okay, so we've been talking quite a bit.
We're going to be having a lot of fun today.
Yeah, this will be a lot of fun. We've been talking quite a bit about DOGE and the USAID and the whole sort of package, this whole sort of movements, this whole sort of, dissembling of the administrative state. And, as Kshama referenced earlier, the segment that we just put out, Elon Musk saying it's not the meaningful divide in society is not between the rich and everyone else, but between the bureaucrats and everyone else. And I think that is manipulative to the point where I consider that to be a psyop, may as well be an organized psyop, even if it's just a disorganized one at this point. Although it's not too disorganized, I should say. But in keeping with that, I did want to play some of this. So, Chief Nerd tweets out, Joe Rogan, Elizabeth Warren said she's never received any money from pharmaceutical drug companies and never received any monies from PACs. Then, of course, underneath it, community note strikes again. So, Joe Rogan had Bret Weinstein on the show. And I watched this part of it, but I wanted some context. So I went back and I watched the episode from the beginning. And thankfully, this comes up about 7 minutes in. So I didn't have to watch too much of it to hear what came before this. So we are going to start about a minute before this, where Joe Rogan talks about how one of the DOGE uncoverings is $40 billion spent on 8 electric car charging ports. And then we're going to get into this part. So we'll back up a little bit. Obviously, audio only for copyright purposes. So here we go.
How about the one where they paid $236 billion, for chargers? Do you know that they were trying to set up chargers?
You mean car chargers? And they only built a couple of them?
Excuse me. $40 billion for electric car ports. 8 ports have been built. You know how crazy that is? $40 billion for car ports.
Okay, so he starts out saying $236 billion. Wherever the hell that came from, which is, think about that, $236 billion. Then goes down to $40 billion for 8 carports.
But I have to say, as much as this is shocking, I wasn't surprised.
A few moments later.
What's that, Jamie?
I was reading an article about the spending on the chargers. They said that they haven't actually, according to this, they haven't actually spent all that money yet.
Well, what do they do with it?
They've spent some of it to make some of those things, but it's just, that hasn't been allocated yet. It's a long article going through all the spending that's been done. It's on factcheck.org.
Factcheck.org. Who runs that?
I don't know. Some of the chargers have been made. Some of them are on the way to be made. And they've built 61 at 15 stations since mid-August or through mid-August. 14,900 more are currently in some stage of development. But that's where it goes into where they are, what they have to be done, and who's getting the money from them. It has to be done through a long process from each state.
Okay, so we're going to pause right there. Okay, so the article from factcheck.org that he puts up on the screen is this one from August 2024, then updated on December 9th. Trump misleads on the cost of electronic vehicle chargers. And we'll read a little bit here. In recent speeches, former President Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed that the Biden administration has spent $9 billion to build only 8 electric vehicle charging stations, or even just 8 chargers. That's not accurate. Trump is likely referring to $7.5 billion approved by Congress to help build a network of EV chargers across the U.S. over 5 years. But not all of the money has been spent or even made available to states yet. Experts say the funds are expected to help build thousands of charging stations and more than 30,000 individual charging ports. According to the Federal Highway Administration, as of mid-August, the funds that have been deployed have helped produce 61 charging ports at 15 stations, with another 14,900 in progress. And then it updated that in December, 226 charging ports at 37 stations across 13 states, with more than 24,000 ports in progress. So that's the factcheck.org article that the producer, I guess his name is Jamie, brought up to sort of fact check in real time. And of course, they're asking now, well, who runs that? Where is that from? So now here we go.
Yeah, the question is, how can we get a proper accounting? As you point out, who the hell is factcheck.org?
Well, that's the problem with fact-checking organizations. That should really be illegal. Like, I think if you're a fact-checking organization, we should have stringent rules on what influence is being peddled. Like, who's paying for these fact-checkers? Who's behind the scenes? What is the it should be very transparent. How did you determine whether or not this was true or false?
Okay, so let's go back to factcheck.org. So you see highlighted right next to factcheck.org is who these organizations represent, a project of the Annenberg Public Policy Center. These were wealthy philanthropists in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is part of the University of Pennsylvania, which is in Philadelphia. You can go to their website. There's an About Us section, blah, blah, blah. They claim to be nonpartisan, which seems essentially fair. When Kamala Harris entered the race, they put out a fact check of her recent speeches and debunked some of her more outrageous lies over the campaign in about 48 hours.
That should be illegal.
Yeah, it should be illegal, yeah. Vice President Kamala Harris went from number 2 on the presidential ticket to the presumptive nominee. So here we go. After President Joe Biden dropped out of the race and endorsed her, here we fact-check some of Harris's recent speeches before and after Biden dropped out. So the first bullet point there, Harris repeated the claim that Trump intends to cut Social Security and Medicare, even though he did not attempt to cut either retirement program when he was president, and has said he will not cut them in a second term. She referred to Project 2025, a conservative plan for deeply cutting and overhauling the federal government, as Trump's extreme Project 2025 agenda. Trump has disavowed the project, which he described as seriously extreme. Vice President, also dictator on day one. They debunked that. He said he was joking when he said he wouldn't be a dictator except for day one. And finally, Harris left the misleading impression that Trump was to blame for the loss of tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs. The U.S. added more than 400,000 manufacturing jobs under Trump until the economic effects of the global COVID pandemic reversed all of those job gains. So they seem to have called out Kamala Harris. They seem to be fairly bipartisan in that way. And as for what determines whether they're true or false, well, just as most articles do, they hyperlink to things. So the blue text includes hyperlinks to sources. That's how you can check out what they are saying. So now he goes from there into what the chief nerd tweet gets at. He goes from there, from saying, hey, fact checkers, how do we know who these people are and who funds them and what they're about? I just said something totally insane.
Yeah, because he got embarrassed by his producer for having no idea what he's talking about, as usual.
Right. And Weinstein, good wingman, backs him up. Says, yeah, it's true. I mean, we don't know. We just don't know. Right. Okay, so he goes from that into this.
Because there are a lot of things that get said. Like, I don't know if you saw this, but Elizabeth Warren got confronted, and it's on Twitter this morning. She got confronted about the amount of money that she's received from pharmaceutical drug companies. She said she's never received any money from pharmaceutical drug companies and never received any monies from any PACs. And then, of course, underneath it, Community Notes strikes again. And, of course, she received millions.
Yeah.
She's a fucking liar.
Well, and it's an arms race. How can pharma cloak the money that it's giving so that there's plausible deniability at the point that Elizabeth Warren is confronted? Or
okay, so Weinstein knows that Rogan has this wrong there, and he's just saying this to cover his ass. That's why he says, they have to give themselves plausible deniability by cloaking these donations to make it look like there's something they're not. Again, he's being a good guest and a good friend, but he definitely knows where Joe is going, and he knows that it's wrong. I don't know if Joe Rogan knows that he's wrong. I have a feeling he just doesn't bother looking into things. He probably scrolls Twitter.
I mean, you're putting a much kinder interpretation on Weinstein than I would. He's a fucking slimy, grifting scumbag who knows where his bread is buttered.
Well, that's what I mean.
That would be my read on.
I mean,
Weinstein.
I said it. I mean, that's yes. I just said it in a nicer way. So he's being a good guest, but yes, that's what he's doing. He's covering, and he knows what he's saying is not true. Here, let's back this up a little bit.
Things that get said, like, I don't know if you saw this, but Elizabeth Warren got confronted, and it's on Twitter this morning. She got confronted about the amount of money that she's received from pharmaceutical drug companies. She said she's never received any money from pharmaceutical drug companies and never received any monies from any PACs. And then, of course, underneath it, Community Note strikes again. And of course, she received millions.
Yeah,
she's a fucking liar.
Well, and it's an arms race. How can pharma cloak the money that it's giving so that there's plausible deniability at the point that Elizabeth Warren is confronted or Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders was hilarious.
Only 1.5 billion. Only 1.5 million out of 200 million. Only 1.5.
Yep, that's what I saw
First
as well.
He tried to say nothing. Only the hardworking people, people in this country gave me money.
Okay. All right. A lot there. Let's take that in the order it was presented. So here's the video that he's talking about. Nervous Elizabeth Warren, check my website. I don't take contributions from big pharma executives. I don't take any corporate PAC money. Here's that confrontation.
2020, the reason why you don't want RFK Jr. suing big pharma? That why?
Check my website. I don't take contributions from big pharma executives. I don't take any corporate PAC money. And you and your allies already know that.
Okay. So
that looked nervous to me.
Yeah. So that was community noted. As you can see, the community note underneath the video. There are 4 different links. We're going to hit all of those links. First, we're going to take the...
No, but even the framing. How is she nervous? She sounds like she always sounds. That's how she talks.
Yeah, right, exactly.
How is she nervous?
Nervous. Big time nervous. All right, so let's take a look at these links here. So first, we're going to attack the PAC money, since that's the less outrageous one. Since she did have a super PAC support her in the very pathetic waning days of her 2020 campaign. This was after she had lost the handful of states. She went from being a front runner in the race to basically being an afterthought. This was after her lie about Bernie telling her a woman couldn't win blew up in her face. All support left, but she, after she quit the race, she had to do self-care. She had to, she was very traumatized by the way her campaign just imploded. And so in the final, yes, exactly. So in the final couple weeks of the campaign, she did enlist the help of a super PAC. So this was one of the links that they linked to. Super PAC launches to support Elizabeth Warren, who has decried the role of super PACs. I remember this story because I remember we called her out for this at the time. Elizabeth Warren condemns super PACs. Now she's benefiting from one. Now, it turns out this super PAC, and this is the third link in the community note, was basically just a way for essentially one person to make an extremely large donation to the Elizabeth Warren campaign, because there are campaign finance rules where individuals can only donate, I believe it's now $2,200 or $2,700 to a campaign directly. So if you have a super wealthy person who wants to give you a boatload of money, they often have to do so through a super PAC. So Mystery Warren super PAC funder revealed, and this funder is Carla Jurvetson, a California physician who gave $14.6 million to Persist PAC. So if you look her up on Influence Watch, she's a physician, philanthropist, and wife of businessman and investor Steve Jurvetson, Democratic Party bundler, political activism. Jurvetson has volunteered for Democratic political causes for over 30 years, first serving as a congressional precinct captain in 1988. In 2008, Jurvetson was a door-to-door canvasser for Barack Obama, and then again for Hillary Clinton in 2016. She currently sits on the board of Emily's List. You get the picture. Super rich, woke, lib, Democrat, who donated, yes, almost all of the money to Elizabeth Warren's super PAC in 2020. Don't forget, this didn't get that many donors because by the time they formed this, A, her campaign was almost over, and B, they had no chance to win. So they weren't going to be raking in thousands of donations from people. Most of the people had moved on. But as you could see there, $14,600,400 from the health industry. And by health industry, we, of course, mean Carla Jurvetson, MD, since she's a doctor, so that gets listed as a health industry spend, even though it is literally one person. Now, you want to call Elizabeth Warren a hypocrite for this? That's fair game. We did so at the time. And as you could see, there is one corporate donation to that PAC from Leith Ventures, which is an investment firm, I believe, in Colorado. So, okay, fine. You want to call her a hypocrite for that? Fine, it's not exactly what they represented, but I'm happy to give you that. I'm happy to give you that, and you should take it because you are certainly going to need it. Because the most egregious thing of all of this is the corporate donations, the big pharma donations, right? So now we go to opensecrets.org, okay? Highlighted that. That's the top link. So if you look here, opensecrets.org, from pharmaceuticals and health product recipients in the 2020 election cycle, notice the top two there are Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Now, it says right on the graphic, important, this money comes from employees or PACs affiliated with the industry, not from the companies themselves. So Bernie Sanders, 1.4 million, Elizabeth Warren, just over 800,000. Now, if you look at the top above that list of names there, I've highlighted it here, select type of data to display. So this says top senators. When you click the hyperlink on the community note, I just wanted to walk through this step by step to keep it as simple as possible. It takes you to this page. Then when you go to this drop-down menu, you can go from top senators, where it says there, Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren, number 1 and 2 for contributions from the pharmaceutical health products industry. If you click the drop-down menu, you can see how much of that money comes from the PACs, which are the big pharma donations. They donate huge sums of money through political action committees. So now we can see what truth there is behind all of these stories that we've heard about how they're secretly funded by Big Pharma. So let's take a look. PAC recipients. Oh. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, nowhere in the top 7. Weird. Let's check further down the list. Check that list of names. Now down to the top 20. No Bernie Sanders. No Liz Warren. Rounding out the top 25. No Bernie Sanders. No Liz Warren. Okay. That brings us to this piece of video, which they referenced as well. This was the viral own Bobby Kennedy just lit up Bernie Sanders. In 2020, you were the single largest receiver of pharmaceutical money. Okay, let's take a look at this confrontation, which they referenced in the Rogan Weinstein piece.
Hey, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry. And protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money.
Contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie, you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but
see, now that last piece is why Bernie Sanders is a loser who never won anything, because you said 1.5 million out of 200 million. He didn't stick with insisting that RFK is lying and deliberately misrepresenting the source of those donations.
You, sir, are what we used to call in Brooklyn a lying scumbag douchebag.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what he should have said. That's what he should have said. And the reason, the reason he never became president is because he doesn't have the balls to say that, right? And he got outmaneuvered there by a lawyer. And that is what RFK is. He's a lawyer. Notice how lawyerly he puts that. You were the number one recipient of pharmaceutical dollars, not of big pharma donations, but pharmaceutical dollars. He phrased it deliberately vaguely so that he wouldn't get caught in that lie. But of course, it is an outright lie. So let's get into this a little bit. This is the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. They took in just over $200 million. They spent just over $200 million. Of course, they were very famously a fundraising juggernaut from the $27 donors, right? I mean, we all know that. Most of us here are in some ways or another veterans of this campaign. So there you have that. That's the big picture. Now, we already went over the pharmaceutical health products. That's the same, right? So if we look at here, the pharmaceutical health products, we already just kind of broke that down, and the distinction between the PAC donations and the individual donations. So here is the second pharmaceutical category, pharmaceutical manufacturing recipients. Look at that. Bernie, number one by a mile. Again, let's do the same thing that we did last time. Let's see PAC recipients from pharmaceutical manufacturing. Font's a little small, so full screen it if you have to. But once again, no Bernie Sanders on the top 9. No Bernie Sanders on the rest of that list. Noticing a pattern here? Well, hey, look, a journalist and commentator with some fucking integrity. How about that? Glenn Greenwald chimes in and says this is becoming a viral claim, referencing this whole expose about Bernie's big pharma PAC money. But it's misleading. Many senators in both parties take huge money from industry PACs and execs, but these figures also include employees of the industry, nurses, technicians, etc. And in Bernie's case, that's where most of it comes from. When an individual donates to a politician, they're asked in which industry they work. So a nurse or orderly or anyone in mid to low paying jobs indicates health and pharmaceutical sector. I have endless criticisms of Bernie, but this is overwhelmingly small donor money. Now, somebody tries to cope here. I'm confused. Is the argument rank and file pharma employees banded together to make small dollar donations to ensure he was the single largest recipient of pharma money? The CEOs don't make the donations. There was clearly a top-down effort to buy influence here. No, sir. No, sir, as we will soon explain. Glenn puts it very well. Bernie, about whom, again, I have endless criticisms, including with RFK, has built an army of small donors and people of modest means, unseen in recent political history. So he likely is near the top in all sectors, not because of corporate PAC support, but mid to low-level employees in these areas. He's not beholden to an industry. That's right. When you have the amount of donors that he had, you're very likely going to rank first or near first across multiple different business sectors and industries. And
Walmart.
So let's take a look. Bernie Sanders, top industries from 2015 to 2020. Bernie Sanders is a top recipient from the following industries in the 2019 to 2020 election cycle: accountants, advertising and public relations services, agricultural services, air transport, airlines, architectural services, auto manufacturers. We won't keep you here all day reading all these, but you see, he's number one in clothing and accessories, commercial and TV radio stations, computer software, credit unions, defense aerospace, and defense electronics. Wow, number one in defense aerospace and defense electronics, in food and beverage, in health services, in hospitals and nursing homes, in industrial unions. Wow, Bernie Sanders is owned by all these industries. If Bernie Sanders is a top favorite of all these industries, why the fuck isn't he president? It seems like every business sector in the country loved him and wanted him to be president. He's in the pocket of all these industries. Look at all these industries. Number one. More. Internet, medical devices, miscellaneous unions, mortgage bankers and brokers. Wow. Big business fan of Bernie. There we have. Second column on the right, pharmaceutical, health products, pharmaceutical manufacturing. We looked into that already. Retail sales, subcontractors, teachers unions, every business interest in the world loves Bernie Sanders, yet he couldn't make it through a primary, he couldn't be president. That's weird because he seems to be totally bought by all of these industries. Number one recipient. Number one, telecommunication services, telephone utilities. Now he slips to number two. Number two among commercial banks. Now that can't be right. Bernie Sanders bought by commercial banks. Let's see. Apparently, yes. Look at that. Number two, 966,000 amongst commercial banks. Let's just check this once more to make sure these aren't coming from PACs. Okay, we switch it to PACs, and once again, you see his name anywhere there, Russell? I don't. My eyes aren't what they were when I was a kid. But let's see. No, nowhere. Okay, commercial banks, no PAC money from commercial banks. Savings and loans, student loan companies. Now that's impossible. He says he wants to cancel all student debt, yet he's the number two recipient of student loan company donations. Bernie Sanders in the pocket of the student loan companies despite wanting to cancel student debt. What a liar. What a hypocrite, as Joe Rogan would have you think, and Bret Weinstein would have you think. So let's take a look at this. Once again, Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware, number one recipient of student loan company donations. There's Bernie again. 12,901. So are these the executives of the companies who profit off the student loans that are donating to Bernie, or are these the sad sacks that have to call you on the phone when you're late on a payment and bother you and harass you? They have to lick the envelopes and send the letters in the mail to tell you that you're late on a payment. Well, let's see. Let's change that top menu item from top recipients to PAC recipients. And once again, Bernie Sanders nowhere on the list. Chris Coons is on the list. Chris Coons gets donations from the student loan company PACs, but Bernie, once again, totally absent from that list, nowhere to be seen. So here's Viva Free, who bought this hook, line, and sinker. Says, just for fun, I went to look at the biggest corporate contributors to Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign and his expenditures. I was curious to see how he burned through $200 million. Holy crap. Thanks for bringing our attention to this, Bernie. Turns out he's not just a big pharma whore. He's a generalized big corporation whore, too. And if you look at the list, Amazon, Apple, U.S. Postal Service, Microsoft, do we have to do that again, folks? I don't think so. But somebody replies to him here, Brian McNelly. This is funny. The post office loses money every year, but they can give $500,000 to Sanders. The military donated? How in the hell? So here you have this guy who circles the post office and the Army and the Air Force and thinking, can you believe the post office is donating to Bernie Sanders? Do we have to search these down for you? I don't think so. I think you get the point. And just to put a button on things, if you look at Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, top contributors, federal election data for Bernie Sanders 2020 from outside groups, no single candidate outside groups associated with Bernie Sanders have raised money for the presidential campaign. Okay. Now, as for his congressional candidacy, he did have some PAC money come in, apparently negative 4827 balance. I don't know what that means. I don't know how he's a negative 10,000 from labor. Wow. But as you can see, his congressional candidacy did take $5,000 in PAC money from the health industry, which was from the American Association of Clinical Urologists. So I don't know if they sent $5,000 worth of Blue Chews or whatever that was. But that is the extent of health-related PACs donating to Bernie Sanders 2019 to 2020. $5,000 from urologists to his congressional campaign or Senate campaign, whatever that was. And I don't even think he was up for re-election in that year. I think it was 2018. They probably just have rolling campaign donations when you're in the Senate. But that is the story there. $5,000 to a rolling Senate campaign from a urologist PAC. Everything else, total and complete bullshit. Now, why does this matter? Well, this matters because, first of all, if you are in this space, and you're RFK or you're an RFK supporter, and you want people to trust you with decisions they make about their health, or even more importantly, about what medicines they decide to give or not give their children, you have an obligation not to be a degenerate psychopathic liar, which he no doubt is. And as for Rogan and Weinstein, if we're going to be the new media now, which I think we are and should be, you have to take that responsibility a bit more fucking seriously. We don't have a team here. It's me and Russell. Jake helps us out with the exhibits on occasion. We haven't leaned on him much lately because news is coming at us so fast. We have to research every story 5-6 layers deep anyway. So there's no point in Jake putting together something. It's just us. And we can look into that and we can figure out very quickly that it's absolute bullshit. So if you're going on the air on the biggest podcast in the country and you are just going to vomit out absolute garbage, then at that point, you have to take your job, your role in the society as being the new media now, a bit more seriously.
All right. At this point, Rogan is just a lazy, decadent, rich prick. Now, in terms of the overall theme of this show, going back to the FDR segment, we could have had Rogan in an alternate universe before the quantum split where Trump became president in 2016. We could have had Rogan. You remember in 2020, Rogan endorsed Sanders. And what happened? AOC, who, you know, the greatest argument that she's an op was her getting out in front of the Rogan endorsement and demanding that Bernie not throw his arms around Rogan because phobeist or some bullshit. Now, Rogan, who I'm increasingly convinced is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I've been resistant to that characterization because so many libs characterize him that way. But the more clips like that I watch, the more I'm forced to agree. He was pushed out of any kind of left movement, right? He tries to embrace Bernie. He gets insulted. And then what happens during COVID? They try to boycott him. They try to cancel him. They try to destroy his life. They did everything. This is where you cannot hate liberals enough. They did this to us. They drove him right into the arms of these criminals, freaks, and anti-woke grifters. They pushed him right into the arms of these people. It did not have to be that way. That having been said, I don't think it was where he needed to end up. But yes, at this point, he's ended up in a place, as we'll see when we get into this, into the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, where he does not even seem to feel the minimum amount of responsibility to the people who listen to his podcast and watch his show. He's got to know he's got a huge audience of mostly working stiffs. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. They tried to go after you for the ivermectin, which, you know, we do not endorse in any way. They tried to go after you for that. It hurt your feelings. You know what? You're a fucking millionaire many, many, many times over. Get over it. Get over it. The people listening to your show who hear Mark Andreessen say just absolute nonsense and you tacitly endorse it by unskeptically just nodding along. Really? Yeah, you have a responsibility to those people because you know what? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau goes away. It's not going to affect you. It's not going to affect you at all.
It affects people who
If you had taken a second to look into Mark Andreessen, you would have found out working people lost their life savings because of that piece of garbage. And you did not do the minimum amount of research you needed to do to expose him on your show. And now he's just continuing to do that, parroting these MAGA talking points. Whatever he might have been, he has completely become a propagandist, arguably, I don't think very arguably, the principal propagandist for a Silicon Valley project of dismantling the administrative state and devolving all power back to their corporate boards.
Well, this is the question that you have to ask, and a lot of people have to ask themselves this. Does your empathy for the people you just talked about, people who have been screwed out of their life savings, who have needed organizations like the CFPB to go to bat for them, or even people who are screwed over less dramatically, but in more routine day-to-day ways, such as overdraft fees. People who are close to the wall financially, I remember those days of being there where you'd get hit with $40 to sometimes $80 in overdraft fees with money that you don't have.
Oh, yeah.
So you literally get penalized by the banks for being poor. The
being
CFPB
poor, yeah.
is designed
You got
to
call
help
them
people.
and beg them to freaking reverse
Of course,
that
to
charge.
get the right, exactly. So the CFPB is there to help people in that situation. Is your empathy for those people bigger or smaller than your hatred of the libs and the liberal class? That's what you have to ask yourself. And if you prioritize your resentments towards the liberal class over those people, well, that's not a serious politics in my view. That's not a serious, it's just not serious. Like, I don't really respect that. You know, we spent years and years on this show, and we still do it every single day. We just trashed the libs again on the last show for their virtue signaling bullshit about Gaza and the voter shaming of the Green Party voters when these fucking losers and assholes had not a word to say about Gaza for 15 months when it was Joe Biden's problem. Now all of a sudden it's Donald Trump's problem. You have something to say. You want to lecture people who didn't vote to rubber stamp Biden's genocide. Like, I still have all the smoke in the world for the libs, but I care more about the people who are going to get fucked over by the, demolition of agencies like the CFPB. I care more about those people than I do about sticking it to the liberals. And apparently Rogan either hasn't thought that through or just hasn't done the research, doesn't bother looking into whether or not these claims about those kinds of agencies are true. Or in this case, what makes this example, and this is why we chose to do this, I mean, come on. If you were paying attention at all during those 2016 or 2020 campaigns, you know that Bernie Sanders was not the top recipient of big pharma money. Like, you just know, like, that's just the most obvious load of bullshit in the world.
They like
and now you're choosing to not, but like at a certain point, it's a conscious choice to parrot that lie. And anyone who has parroted that is not credible. This is why I say, man, like, as someone, we read RFK's book. There's a lot in the book I liked. There's a fair amount I did not like. I don't think all of his opinions are completely dismissible. You make yourself dismissible when you lie that egregiously, that publicly. How do you expect people who don't know any better to trust you as a health authority when you lie like that? The man is a degenerate liar. He's not a credible person. He's not a credible person. You want a dissident in there? Jay Bhattacharya is a credible person. Have you seen him tweet this nonsense? No, he's a credible guy. So you're telling me he can't pick someone for HHS? It has to be this guy? It has to be this guy who you really want to restore public confidence in the health system? You're going to put a guy there who just looks into a camera and lies with such ease? I'm sorry. It's a no for me.
Yeah, this is what's so dangerous about the current moment. All of our institutions have lost the public trust, and that is something that they well earned. And now that has opened the door for these criminals, really, to just say whatever shit they want. It's really like watching the jaws of a trap close. You've got the world's richest man controls this very visible social media platform in which he is clearly manipulating the algorithms to elevate certain narratives. They go on there and say whatever shit they want. And because the institutions, the journalists that at one time people might have looked to, hey, is this true, are discredited themselves, there is no authoritative source of information at all.
Exactly.
And in that vacuum, they are just flooding the zone with nonsense faster than you can knock it down.
Right.
Good journalists in this moment, they're worth their weight in gold, and there are very few of them, very few left at this point.
Well, that's why I put Greenwald in there. Yeah. Because Greenwald stepped in and somebody tried to give him pushback. He said, no. I mean, that's the way it goes. So, anyway, glad we got that done. All right, well, now we're going to move into the sort of B part of this, but not before we take some Super Chats and Rumble Rants. Hardly Daylight, thanks for the $10. USA, not contented with decimating its own native population. Oops, sorry. Where is it? It's onwards to wipe out Palestinians as government policy. MAGA, make America genocidal again. Oh, sorry, Jake. Jake keeps adding rumble rants and losing my space. That's all right. No worries. Ever get the feeling you've been duped? Thank you. Appreciate that. Eric Rousseau, FDR and the Democrats fear the dictatorship of the proletariat. They fear working class power. Otacon 237, it's not just that fascism is punishing people they don't like. It's also that people they don't like labeled everything they know and love their whole lifestyle and culture as fascism.
Yep.
Lori Lamb, thanks for the $5. I left the Democratic Party in 2009 when Obama hired Larry Summers for his economic advisor. Well, good on you. You saw the writing on the wall. That's when we all should have. But the sad reality is most people don't know who Larry Summers is. Good call. Good call. You're the first person I ever know I've ever seen bring that up. That was the tell for them, and that should have been the tell. So good on you. Fun fact, FDR tried to force British government and military to enforce U.S. segregation laws on British soil where U.S. soldiers were stationed. They refused, resulting in riots instigated by white U.S. soldiers. MAGA's basically...
I have got to look into that. I have never heard that. I don't doubt it, but I've never heard about that.
MAGA is basically the Bill Cosby of movements. It attracts you in with cult of personality, drugs you, and violates you again and again without you noticing, and gets away with it again and again. Thank you, Kenman. Appreciate that. The ratioing. In response to Trump's Gaza ethnic cleansing suggestion, a Saudi official proposed moving all Israelis to Greenland. Oh, I got you on that one. D.C. in capitalist America, Tool owns you. There you go. Philly Jimmy. Russell just disproved the notion the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Also, democracy not on ballot in a Trump-com election. I agree. Michael Castillo, I'm going to New York on the 13th of March. I'm going to Carlo's Bakery. Oh, beautiful. All right. Well, Carlo's Bakery, you going to the Hoboken one or you going to the Penn Station one?
He's coming on my tour. Because it starts at Carlo's Bakery.
Oh, okay. Your tour starts at Carlo's Bakery. Oh, okay. Got it. All right. Well, good on you, Michael Castillo. Russell, I'm looking at staying in the Corleone mansion for a few days in Staten Island, which is an Airbnb. Is that an Airbnb? They made that into an Airbnb?
I never heard that. Interesting.
Wow, that's great. It's $3,300 limit for primary and $33 for general. Okay, yeah, I was a little fuzzy on the I thought it was $27, and then I thought, did they decrease it? Doesn't make sense that they would decrease it. So they must have increased it to $3,300 for the personal donation.
Because I think it was, 27.
It was $2,700, yeah. Only pictures of the Corleone mansion, no Airbnb anymore. Got it. Free Palestine, says Zayshan Qureshi. Appreciate that very much. Okay. All right. 25. All right. Nice. Beautiful. Okay. Why don't we move on to the CFPB?
All right. Nobody heard of this agency outside of like real politics geeks until Humpty Dumpty went on our friend Joe Rogan's show and started talking about it. And the next day, everyone was an expert on this agency demanding that it be dismantled immediately. Let's see what he said.
This thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control. And it's an independent agency.
It's not true. She has absolutely no control over that agency. It was her idea, but immediately he's lying from the beginning.
Just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just like terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services.
Can you give me an example?
Well, I say, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from. Is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee
for what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking.
Okay. Yes, Joe Rogan is a complete and total fucking clown. Really? Did it ever occur to you that this oligarch with interests in fintech who doesn't in any way want to be regulated or constrained or held accountable when his dodgy financial services products blow up in the face of working people, might have an interest in pushing this narrative about a regulatory agency charged with imposing those kinds of restraints, Joe? Did that ever cross your fucking mind?
Well, no, because he's not on the right side of the square that Elon tweeted out. You know, don't forget, it's not just the rich who are your enemy. It's only the rich people who are with the government that are your enemy. The rich people who want to dismantle the government so they can get even richer, those are not your enemy. They want to empower you. The person at the DMV wants to control you, even though they're poor. They work for the government, so they're the problem.
I think at the end of the day, people have to realize just because you're ripped and bald doesn't mean you're not rich. Joe Rogan's very rich. He has common interests with these guests that he does not have with his listeners. Maybe that's part of it too. So he's talking about debanking. You know what? You know what's really ironic about this? Actually, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was the agency trying to put a stop to debanking, not only of people like Kanye, but imposed by people like Andreessen, who run these fintech products with absolutely no accountability. So here's Rohit Chopra, who one of Trump's first acts was to fire him as the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Here's him talking about what they do.
Been assessing very large dominant tech firms like Google Pay, Apple Pay, others, as well as some examples of where there has been network effects and tipping points, such as the commonly used Venmo and PayPal services. Many of you might recall how a year and a half, 2 years ago, many people who were users of PayPal's Venmo service received some communications, and there was news about this, about the ability of that company to be able to sanction or fine you, taking money and confiscating it out of your account for your activities or speech that may have been unrelated to payments. In other words, creating a way in which they're setting laws or conditions outside of the democratic process that deny or foreclose access to what is essentially essential payments infrastructure in the society. So
all right, so that's an economics nerd's way of saying debanking. He just said there's a problem with these services like PayPal being able to shut you out from financial services that people rely on at this point.
I think we should all really worry about how modern day business practices that encourage the accumulations of capital for these network-based businesses with difficult switching costs that cannot really be easily replicated, that are sometimes referred to as winner-take-all markets. At what point do those entities start becoming lawmaking bodies, regulators on their own? And I think, I run a regulatory agency that is subject to all of the ways in which the Congress can simply pass a law to change through the democratic process. That is not necessarily what we have with these enormous agglomerations of power today.
Okay, so why would a big venture capital tech oligarch who likes to invest in dodgy fintech products like Andreessen be so upset about an agency which, as you just heard, is interested in stopping people like him from becoming a law unto themselves? And in spite of what Andreessen said there on Rogan, no, they are not an independent agency, not subject to any law, who could just go do whatever they want unto themselves. What he wants is to be what he described there. He wants to be that. That is his issue with that agency. So our friend Li Fang here tweeted out about this. The only agency that actually proposed regulations to protect consumers from debanking, closing customer accounts over political speech or religious beliefs, etc., was the CFPB. So this decision effectively provides industry with more debanking powers. That's what he wants. That's the Trojan horse of all of this. So why does Andreessen have such a particular investment in this? We talked about this in a previous segment. We'll link to that more extended segment. But let's just take a little tour of what the consequences are of the kind of world that Andreessen wants you to live in. I have no money. Thousands of Americans see their savings vanish in Synapse fintech crisis. Synapse customers get back pennies on the dollar from Evolve. Let's hear the story of one person who was a customer of one of Andreessen's fintech products. A mother of three, Kayla Morris, had $282,153.87 at Yada, a savings startup that used Synapse to open bank accounts on behalf of customers. Evolve, however, claims it holds just $579.08 of that total. That's less than a penny on the dollar, according to screenshots Morris provided from her account. This is why right here, I have no patience for people who want to run around making excuses for Elon, for Andreessen, and their whole fucking criminal class. If you're a working person, you know how much money that is for a working person to save up almost $300,000. Imagine that happened to you, man. And you got back 579. Mark Andreessen freaking is sitting on Joe Rogan. He should be in jail for life, prison for life for that, at the least. Quote, "We are very frugal. It's hard not to regret so much," says Morris. She and her husband had sold their Texas home in 2023 and moved to Arizona after a health scare to be closer to family. The family recently discovered that one of their 3 children has a congenital heart condition. The proceeds from the sale went into the Yada account, which promised higher interest rates than traditional banks. Morris was preparing to use the money to buy a new residence in Arizona when Synapse imploded. Quote, "We were living more comfortably," she says. "Now everything, the house buying, so much savings that we could have used toward medical bills is on hold," she said. So another article also from Axios, but what does this have to do with Andreessen? Synapse was a middleman connecting fintechs that didn't have banking licenses with actual banks. It raised just over $50 million in VC funding, most recently in a $33 million Series B round in 2019, led by Andreessen Horowitz, which took a board seat. We got to get Joe Rogan on the soundboard going, "Really? Really?" Really, Joe. A modest proposal. Synapse is broke. Andreessen Horowitz is not. The venture firm got wiped out on its Synapse investment and has no legal obligation to help, but it could be the financier of last resort for people like Kayla Morris, kind of like what Bain Capital and KKR did when they created a $20 million pool to compensate thousands of Toys R Us employees who lost their jobs when the retailer shut down, funded by the general partners, not the limited partners. In this case, we're talking about just 2 to 3 million, which is just a small fraction of the management fees that Andreessen Horowitz generates each year. Andreessen Horowitz did not return requests for comment. So they wouldn't even put up a couple $1 million to help these people to maybe get a little more of their money back. That's the person that Joe Rogan credulously platformed. And that's the person that people listened to when they started screaming on X right after that appearance about how the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau needs to be taken down. Listen, if you were a moron on November 4th, you didn't all of a sudden get smart on November 6th. Okay? Just because somebody said it on Joe Rogan does not mean that it's actually true. Now, this is another part of the reason that they probably are very excited to take down this agency. CFPB issues final rule to give Bureau supervisory power over digital consumer payment applications. The final rule will allow the CFPB to supervise companies in several areas covered by federal law, including privacy and surveillance, Large technology companies are collecting vast quantities of data about a person's transactions. Federal law allows consumers to opt out of certain data collection and sharing practices. In addition, misrepresentations about data protection practices are prohibited. You know, I wonder why a guy like Elon, who wants to turn X into an everything app, who's been busily rifling through the payment system at Treasury with everyone's personal information in it, I wonder why a law like that would bother him. Let's go on. Errors and fraud. Under federal law, consumers may dispute transactions they believe are incorrect or fraudulent, and financial institutions must investigate those complaints. CFPB officials said they are particularly concerned about how payment apps may be used to defraud older adults and active duty service members. Again, accountability for these fintech services, which they're not, and for big banks as well. Debanking. What Andreessen would have you believe the CFPB actually does is what they are, one of the only agencies, perhaps the only agency in existence, trying to protect people from. Consumers can face serious harm when they lose access to their app without notice, or when they cannot make or receive payments. The CFPB said the consumers have reported concerns to the CFPB about disruptions to their lives due to closures or freezes. Well, you know who really pays the price for all this? Kanye.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But here we are, not surprisingly. Vought moves to defang CFPB, telling staff to halt all supervision. President Trump's newly installed Consumer Financial Protection Bureau chief, Russell Vought, ordered staff to halt all of their supervisory efforts, ramping up the administration's attempt to revoke the financial regulator's authority. Vought, the head of the Office of Management and Budget, who also became the acting director of the CFPB on Friday, issued a notice to staff on Saturday demanding they cease all supervision and examination activity, according to an email reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Vought also said in a post on X that he notified the Federal Reserve that CFPB will not be taking its next draw of unappropriated funding. The agency is funded by the Fed. So essentially, as with so much of what they've been doing, they're doing an end run around Congress to essentially break agencies they don't like without going through any kind of a legal process. They're defunding the agency from within. Vaught's moves on his first full day in control of the agency could defang the financial regulator, a longtime goal of Republicans and a recent target of Trump and Elon Musk. Vaught's declaration to stop agency work goes further than the one issued by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and George Soros alumni, I will interject, who had briefly been installed earlier this week as the acting CFPB head. Bessent had called on the agency to not start any new investigations or approve or issue final rules. A CFPB official said that Vaught's order would pull hundreds of agency examiners off the job. Representatives of Musk's Department of Government Efficiency entered the CFPB's offices and were granted access to data earlier this week. The officials were given read-only access to various systems, according to an email to staff reviewed by the Journal. Musk on Friday had posted CFPB RIP on his X social media platform with an emoji of a tombstone. Parts of the CFPB website were being shut down, and its own X account had been deleted this weekend. The CFPB's most current public list from 2024 of financial institutions that they supervise include, listen closely, this is who wanted this, JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley, among others. Under the Biden administration, the agency and head, Rohit Chopra, had regularly moved against the big banks and raised their ire. Trump fired Chopra earlier this month. Democrats have pledged to defend the agency and its work for consumers, and this weekend had raised their own alarms about Musk's moves and attempts to shut it down. Now, there's another piece of this story that was actually brought to my attention by More Perfect Union. If you haven't checked them out, they do some very good documentary work over there. So here's Elon, CFPB, RIP. And once again, Lee, closing CFPB means rapidly accelerating the shift to app-based financial platforms with zero consumer protections. No FDIC insurance, no promises your money won't be used to speculate on crypto like Sam Bankman-Fried, etc. Horrible idea that only empowers predators from the tech industry. As I'm sure Lee knows, that's not a bug, that's a feature. So, what does Trump's new chief of staff, Susan Wiles, right? Wiles or Wiley?
I think Wiles.
Wiles, right?
Yeah.
What does she have in common with your new Attorney General, Pam Bondi? Can you guess what they have in common? They both are alumni of Ballard Partners, which is now the biggest lobbying firm in Washington, the closely linked to Donald Trump lobbying firm, Ballard Partners. Ballard Partners is so on the inside track with this administration. Even Harvard just hired them. Even Harvard. Everyone's bending the knee to this new power structure. Look at all the savings and billions of dollars that these organizations got from hooking up with Ballard Partners in the first administration. God, this administration looks like it's going to be even better. So this is a little short that More Perfect Union put together about all of the agenda priorities that the Trump administration has that are linked to clients of Ballard Partners. I'm just going to play a 2-minute section of this dealing with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Corporate America has a key consumer protection agency in its crosshairs. The Invictus Collective, an investment advisor for ultra-high net worth families, and payday lender Advanced Financial Administration are new Ballard clients with a particular interest in one agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Tech billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Andreessen allege that the CFPB pressured banks to terminate the bank accounts of people whom the Biden administration disagreed with politically. In reality, the CFPB has actually fought debanking. But Andreessen, wealthy individuals represented by Invictus Collective, and payday lenders like Advanced Financial are furious with the CFPB for other reasons.
He has specific investments in companies, 2 of them that I can think of, one called LendUp and one called Synapse, that have both been put out of business by the Consumer Financial Protection Agency for stealing from customers. All right, or for collapsing and costing people their life savings.
Now, as a result of the CFPB's aggressive actions to defend consumers, it has won over $21 billion from more than 200 million Americans. A fight is brewing over the future of the agency. On the first day of his second term, with former Ballard lobbyist and now Chief of Staff Susie Wiles by his side, Trump signed dozens of executive orders. Among them was one that didn't get much attention. Trump revoked a Biden executive order that instructed outgoing officials not to use their government service for private gain, not to accept gifts from lobbyists, not to lobby for 2 years after government work, and not to accept bribes. So when Trump says,
above all, you deserve leadership in Washington that does not answer to the lobbyists, to the bureaucrats, or to the corrupt special interests, but answers only to you, the hardworking citizens of America.
Know the truth. With corporate lobbyists embedded in the highest levels of government, Ballard Partners and their corporate clients are in an ideal position to shape policy and profit from it.
Wow, that is weird that Elon is not tweeting about that executive order. Isn't that weird that they're not drawing attention to the fact that he gave an executive order that allows more control of lobbyists over the government? Wow, that's so strange that they didn't want to draw anybody's attention. It's all about DEI and gender, and they didn't mention anything about that. So this is what you have to remember. with all the culture war distraction, with all the U.S. aid, which, hey, the left has been screaming about U.S. aid forever. I'm not saying there's nothing there. I'm saying it's a smokescreen for their real agenda. Their real agenda is to dismantle every last, but not that there was much to restrain them before. Every last restraint on their power, they're dismantling and getting rid of. And the saddest part is they're getting you to cheer for it. They're getting you to cheer for your own destruction as a class. If you are getting excited that they're getting rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, you're broken. You're broken. You're mentally broken. You are completely brainwashed. And that's exactly where they want you.
Yes. Brings to mind a famous quote, a revolution without banking is a revolution not worth having. Yes. The
idea that you would celebrate a fucking criminal miscreant like Mark Andreessen. Hey, why is your anger being directed at Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who we are not fans of? We're not fans of them.
Yeah, no, I'm angry at them too for a different reason.
For different reasons, for better reasons, I would argue.
Yeah.
Why are
for
they
real reasons? How about that? For real reasons, for true reasons, not made up bullshit reasons. Yeah.
They have completely subverted your working class populist impulses towards all institutions and people who offer any challenge to their power and to their narrative and to their worldview. You should be, in a sane world, you'd be calling for Mark Andreessen to be locked up, not celebrating him because he said some nonsense on Joe Rogan that Rogan was too lazy and too compromised, frankly, to challenge.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It comes back to that graphic that we showed in the last exhibit when we talked with Kshama earlier in this live stream. She said she appreciated that segment. I'm glad she watches the show as much as she does, actually. She's one of these people who doesn't just tell you she's flattering. A fan. She actually watches the segments. Don't punch sideways. Don't punch down. Only punch up. Because these people are going to take everything. That's what they want to do, and that's what they're going to do.
When they're done with the immigrants, they're coming for you.
And, well, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, literally right out of my mouth. Kshama has part of that banner, Stop Mass Deportations. And some people think that's a controversial stance. If there is ever a moment where the saying applies, first they came for this group and I said nothing because I'm not in this group, yeah, that applies right now. You should stand up for immigrants because immigrants are workers. Period. Do not punch other workers. Do not attack other workers. You have a problem. The problem is not with the immigrant. The problem is with people like Elon who hire immigrants, right? They're the ones who took your job. The immigrant didn't take your job.
Yep.
Your job was given to an immigrant by one of these people.
He's going to fuck you in the face over the H-1B visas.
Over the
Look how easily he manipulated you back towards supporting him. He showed you his true face for a second. He saw that didn't play. Right. He went back to DEI. Look at the DEI.
Yep. No, I mean, how you can punch sideways or worse down, but really sideways too. You need class solidarity in these times or else you're done. We're done. These people will take everything. That is what they want. You really think they care about trans musicals in Ireland or whatever the fuck they're making a big deal about? You really think they give a shit about that? They don't. They want to take down any and all barriers to their power, any and all restraints on their wealth and their influence. They want to tear down. That is what this is. That's why I called it a psyop, and I stand by that. They are using culture war grievance to manipulate you into cheering for your own looting. The CFPB is a perfect example. They wanted this. We knew they wanted this. That's why we did the hour-long segment on Andreessen the
National
first
Labor
time.
Relations Board.
They crippled the NLRB. Exactly. That's what this is. It is a class war, and they are just completely unrestrained in this moment. And so, in this moment, if you are not seeing that clearly, then you are a sitting duck, my friend. You're a sitting duck. Unless you're rich. I mean, if you're rich, you'll be okay.
You're rich, sure.
But if you're a working person watching this and you're cheering it on and you're saying, well, I'm enjoying it for now. And then, when they turn when they turn their guns on me, that's when I'll well, then it'll be too late. Then it'll be too late. That's where the saying goes. That's why they say first they came for this group and I said nothing because I'm not in this group. Well, if that doesn't apply now, I don't know what it does. I mean, their intentions are very obvious. Very, very obvious. And we did not oppose Kamala Harris so that we could sign off on this. We said that. A lot of people didn't believe us. Some people still don't believe us. We still have You Don't Like My Music coming into the chat 2 hours before the show starts. I bet you guys like Modi. I bet you guys like Trump. Now, look, we're nice to you because you're nice to us. You don't like us, okay, and that's fair. But you're always cool. We don't block you. Okay, but that's not fair.
You
That's
keep
not
it
fair.
political, not personal.
Yeah, he's fine. He's cool. But I would say it's really not fair. Look, we were not voting to rubber stamp a genocide, period. We were not voting to rubber stamp breaking up a railroad strike, period. That's off the table, right? If you're a serious political movement, you have to have certain red lines. Both of those cross mine. I think I could speak for Russ when they say they cross his as well. So that's out of the question. But I think what a lot of people, like in the Rogan example, when you are oppositional to the party in power, it's easy to then fall on the good side of the fence when the oppositional party takes power. And, I find it to be my role to try and speak truth to power as best I can, not to rationalize it. You shouldn't be rationalizing this. This is an assault on working people. This is a full frontal assault on poor and working people. If it wasn't, they'd have left the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau alone. Elon got pushback
And
for
the
this on
NLRB.
X. And the NLRB. But I'm talking about Elon specifically got pushback for this. He got pushback for this. So he knows this is not the most politically popular. There are people who are commenting, hey, I love DOGE, but I don't know about this. Okay, well, this is what they want. This is the point of what they're doing. The point of what they're doing is to dismantle institutions like this. The other stuff is window dressing to get you to consent to it.
Let me ask you, and again, we're going to get into it in the next segment. We're not fans of USAID. We're not defending it. It's 1% of the federal budget. In what way do you think you're going to benefit? You're not going to benefit. The things that benefit you, like this, that's what you're going to feel. That's what you're going to feel the impact of. And frankly, I just read an article by Chris Hedges that was pretty interesting. It's a little far afield for this. You can cut this from the clip. Where he said, hey, what these people like Elon are too ignorant to realize is actually these agencies, they're not stupid. It's all that's holding this whole American imperial project together is all of the sending out all of these CIA agents all around the world to subvert opposition and labor movements. And once you take it apart, the American empire is going to collapse very quickly. That these people are too stupid and ignorant of how all this works to realize that they're cutting their own throats, actually. I'm not saying I want to see all that stay intact. I'm just saying they probably don't completely understand the implications of what they're doing.
Yes, I think that is well said. All right, we're going to do the scroll in just a minute, Jake. Not yet. I want to do this Rumble Premium read first, since this was just put on our screen here. So this sponsorship, folks, is from Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on issues like COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line, and they're attacked daily for giving shows like us a voice to talk to audiences like you. They're attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech, while Rumble is, of course, fighting to preserve it. But Rumble won't survive without brand advertisers because they don't get many of them. So watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of the Rumble app. So join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. So go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are just happy if you watch us on the platform. All righty. All right, Jake, why don't we put up our scroll here, please, and thank you very much. So, hey, folks, if you like what we do here... Yep, well, we'll do that. We'll get to it. Don't worry. I got it. If you like what we do here, you can help us do more of it by becoming a member. If you're watching on Rumble right now, you can click that bright red join button underneath the screen. That takes you to our locals. Everybody else, go to dudissidents.locals.com where you can sign up for just $5 a month. Perks of membership include call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday. Today's Sunday, which means you're going to a Q&A right after this show. You also get bonus live streams. You get live stream access to our pre-recorded full-length interviews. We interviewed Mark Goodwin this past week. Those paid members got live stream access and then early viewing access to that, obviously. And we have some interviews coming up over the next couple of weeks. So we make it as worthwhile as we possibly can. DoDissidents.locals.com. We also have a Patreon and a Substack. But Locals is the free speech member-based platform that is linked to Rumble. So we're really pushing that one, dudissidents.locals.com. You guys are the backbone of the show, so please and thank you very much for your support. All right, Russell, go ahead, plug your tour. I got the link up here. Jake, you can let the scroll finish.
All right, so this is coming up actually the 14th and the 15th, not the 13th. Friday and Saturday before St. Patrick's Day. All right, so this was the first tour I created on my own. Because when you're working as a tour guide, they send you to Central Park, they send you to the Statue of Liberty. What I really wanted to do was the Irish Mob. So I created the Irish Mob of Hell's Kitchen tour. What's very cool about this tour is all of the murder sites, all of the headquarters, all of the places that I talk about on the tour, they're all still there. All those buildings, all those bars, everything's still there. So it's a whole history of the Irish mob in New York, but particularly focused on Hell's Kitchen, which was more 20th century, all the way into the 80s with the Westies. So if you want to check it out, we will be doing it the 14th and the 15th. It'll be a good time.
All right, that's dudissidents.com/tour. Tickets are going fast. We're selling quite a few, so make sure you head over there. It is in just over 1 month from today. All right. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate that. All right. Let's go to some Super Chats and Rumble Rants. Bloodthirsty. Hold on. Wait. Zeren Zayshan Qureshi, Free Palestine. Thank you very much. Grant Hanlon. You two have so many disagreements with Rogan. Why don't you try to do a segment or show together? Maybe enlighten him. Man, it's a tough invite to get, man. That's like saying, why don't you go on Carson? It's like, why don't you do the Johnny Carson show? It's like asking a stand-up comic, hey, why don't you make that happen?
Look at Jesse. She put the link in the chat. Thank you, Jesse.
Oh, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, look, as I said, as Russ said in the segment, I think it's a sad case. I think he's a guy who the liberals drove away. Which didn't have to happen.
They did.
But at the same time, you don't have to let yourself go all the way over there just because you got burned. I mean, there's a certain gullibility. There's a certain unwillingness to just do your basic due diligence. Yeah, that you should do. I think that's fair. Eric, Bloodthirsty Mayonnaise, you bug me sometimes, but you're right, Russ. There you go. That's a nice compliment. Eric Maines, thanks for the $50. We got a cowbell for Eric. Thank you for that, my friend. Appreciate that. There we go. Wow, you can hear that nice and loud with the computer mic. A larger than normal contribution for Valentine's, because I love you guys in a non-homoerotic, manly kind of way, of course. Except when Keaton got his new haircut, I had to screenshot and put a poster of him above my bed then. LOL. Thank you. Appreciate that, Eric Maines. Very kind. Pre-Valentine's donation. Radicles, a California corporation, is trying to steal my community's water and build the second largest bottling plant in the U.S. Please help fight this. JeffersonCountyFoundation.org/zoning water bottling facility in Middleway. Thank you. We will look into that. Appreciate that, Radicles. Can you fellas hurry up and finish the show? I have a chess match lined up with Max von Sydow, followed by an after party with 7 angelic trumpeters. It's got to be revelatory. All right. Well, we got one more segment, then we're going to the Q&A.
Where are we at with likes?
Where are we at with likes? Oh, 1,082. Go ahead.
I thought you were going to hit
Make that happen. Well, no, I got the other. I'm on the wrong
All
screen.
right. I'm getting there. This is what you call a tight ship.
Furl Squeen says, this is a treat not having to wait till midnight to see you two and all your friends in the chat, unless I made a terrible error with my timekeeping. Like we jeered me. No, we are on daytime. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I tell you, this is really a Kamala versus Trump kind of Super Bowl. Kansas City Chiefs versus Philadelphia Eagles. No one's rooting for these teams. If you don't live in either of those two cities, it is hard to root for one of these teams. Why do people like Rogan so much? He's a lousy comedian, second-rate actor, and barely literate meathead. You know, I actually don't think he's
average guy thing.
Yeah, it's an average guy thing. I don't think he's a terrible comedian. I think his joke writing is decent. I think his presentation. I have a theory: comics have to be vulnerable, or like someone who's not vulnerable is not funny. And because he's so built, it's like he's not. You're watching someone who could fucking snap me over his leg like a twig. It's hard for a person like that to be funny. Even if their jokes are good. Like, it's just
how Carrot Top's career died as soon as he got roided out.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as he got roided out. That's right. That's right. You have to be you have to be everyman looking. You can't look like an Ubermensch and do comedy, So that's my theory about that. Noah Goop. In the Rogan Weinstein interview, Trump was laughing and making light of Trump making a hotel in Gaza. Trump was laughing? You mean somebody else? You mean Weinstein? You said Trump twice. Repeated that he duped BB BS. Rogan knows better, but for whatever reason, he's telling the line. Yeah, the he duped BB is just, I didn't get that. Yeah.
Massive code.
I didn't get that. I wanted to watch the whole interview because I wanted to see what the context of that clip was, and thank God it was like 6 minutes in, so I didn't have to watch the whole thing because I was up super early this morning. I would have watched the whole thing.
Thank heavens for small mercies.
Exactly.
Yeah, by the way, those of you sticking around for the Q&A, on the intermission, our friend Nico House spent a lot of time examining the peculiar career of one Ian Carroll on Hotspot. So I've got about half that video in the intermission.
Oh, you didn't do a football intermission?
No.
Lame. According to documents obtained by the Gray Zone, the U.S.-funded International Republican Institute funded the Bangladesh trans dance parties. Yep, that's our final segment of the day.
That's literally the next segment.
That's the next segment. Washington NFL football team is bringing back the Redskins, and we'll have Elizabeth Warren as the new logo. Yeah, that's how you know woke has lost. Yeah, exactly. Be the mascot. Noah Goop, do your own research, proceeds to not do any research at all whatsoever. This is what I'm telling you, man. Like, if you want people to take you seriously as an authority on these things, and it's not that I think they're wrong on all these things. In fact, I think they're right on some of these things, but you can't lie like that. You just can't lie, and you can't repeat lies like that. People are not going to trust you. Why should they trust you? If an ordinary person doesn't know much about anything, right? They watch Joe Rogan, they hear that. Once you find out that someone has manipulated you that brazenly and that intentionally, right? In the case of a lot of the people tweeting that. Again, Rogan, I don't think he did it on purpose. I think he reads Twitter and says, "Ooh, wow," right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, but a guy like RFK,
really?
He chose those words so particularly. He said pharma dollars, right? He didn't say big pharma. He chose it so loyally. He knew he was manipulating you. So if you're going to do that, don't be surprised when you have a tough time gaining people's trust about very personal decisions on matters of health, right? Eric Rousseau, Bernie sold us all out. Fuck that lying cuck. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Corporations often funnel their donations through workers. I'm not convinced RFK is lying. Pharmaceutical dollars could easily be coming from executives.
Yeah, that's what they did. That's what they did. They doled it all out.
And they do that to every other candidate, right? So all those other candidates who get thousands of dollars in PAC money, they don't do it. They don't do it to them. They do it to this one. Right? That's what they do.
Plausible. It's totally plausible.
Totally plausible that pharmacists get emails from the executives.
That is more plausible than the idea that a junkie lawyer lied.
Right. Exactly. Right. Pharmacy workers get emails from the CEOs. Hey, donate $100 to the Bernie Sanders campaign because in 9 years, one of his critics is going to be up for HHS secretary and he's going to need an own. Right. I mean, that's just.
Yep.
It's cope. That is cope. That is some serious cope. Okay. Eric Rousseau, Bernie still serves the corporate state, whether getting money or for free. He defends Biden, who was bought for sure. Yes, that is what you call a valid critique of Bernie, which we have made ourselves. There's a difference between that and absolute nonsense. Eric Rousseau, the oligarchs might have allowed Bernie to win if they didn't know what a cuck he is. Well, I agree. I mean, in retrospect, they probably should have. If they didn't want Trump, they probably should have. I think they're pretty happy with Trump, though. I think they're getting most of what they want. Doing. Yeah. Bernie voted for the greatest transfer of wealth to the 1%. Again, that's another totally valid criticism. And Aid, I am. Thank you for your efforts in keeping us informed. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thanks for the kind words. All right, let's go. We got one more segment, and then we're going to the Q&A, and then it's game time, bitches.
Okay. PSYOP go-go, baby. So Elon Musk tweeted out, USAID was a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Now, Vijay Prashad responded, actually, Elon Musk, radical left Marxists such as myself detest USAID. It was a viper's nest of liberal imperialists. And you know what? Liberal imperialists come in both blue and red. This is Brian Berlatic. We had this on a segment the other day, but to catch you up, if we're investigating NED and want to reform USAID, why is the U.S. under Trump putting Secretary Rubio in charge of USAID after he spent years eagerly advancing the NED's agenda on the board of directors of its subsidiary, the International Republican Institute? Will he be investigated as well? And here's the IRI, which I would wager again, like USAID, most people never heard of a week ago. IRI congratulates board member Senator Marco Rubio on his nomination as U.S. Secretary of State. So what does IRI do? You're going to be very surprised to hear this if you're still thinking in terms of red and blue, or you think these guys are cleaning up Marxist excesses here. This from the Gray Zone, Wyatt Reed. Why did Republicans fund transgender dance in Bangladesh? You notice you're not hearing about this particular funding when they go out there and talk about how crazy the funding has been from U.S.
Version. It's sick. It's degenerate and sick.
Transgender. For years, the Republican Party aligned International Republican Institute's agenda in Bangladesh has been dominated by ethnic minority and transgender issues, with leaked documents revealing the Institute sponsored, quote, the largest published survey of LGBTI, I guess that's intersex there, people in Bangladesh, and that a full 24% of the 1,868 Bangladeshis who participated in IRI programs in 2019 and 2020 were transgender. The IRI's cultural activities were conducted with explicitly subversive objectives, aiming to recruit socially excluded groups as regime change activists. They mirrored the U.S. government's machinations in Cuba, where, as the Gray Zone reported, U.S. aid funded rappers, artists, and, quote, desocialized and marginalized youth, unquote, to undermine the country's socialist government. Since its founding in 1983, the congressionally funded IRI has been run by Republican politicians and operatives dedicated to the cause of, quote, democracy promotion abroad. IRI's chairman, Senator Dan Sullivan, is a vehement opponent of same-sex marriage, who signed onto a GOP letter calling to restrict the participation of transgender youth in sports. While many of the Institute's board members are never Trump Republicans, like Senator Mitt Romney, the board also includes Senator Tom Cotton, a top Trump ally who strongly opposes transgender medical interventions for youth. The IRI's eyebrow-raising statistics on trans participation in regime change activities were included in an internal report on its heirs, promoting accountability, inclusivity, and resiliency support program, which was obtained by the Gray Zone in 2024. Isn't that crazy? Tom Cotton, all of these fire-breathing Republicans. Marco Rubio was on the board of the IRI. All of these people who are getting you all riled up about trans in sports, which, hey, I'm against. I've done segments about that. But we usually are focused on, well, the libs use this to hide their economic agenda. Well, apparently, even I'm surprised by this, the Republicans actually support the same tactics for undermining social cohesion as long as it's abroad. And we'll ask the question as we go a little after the article. It looks like maybe they did that here too. The report boasts that IRI issued 11 advocacy grants to artists, musicians, performers, or organizations that created 225 art products addressing political and social issues that were viewed nearly 400,000 times and supported 3 civil society organizations from LGBTI, Bahari, and ethnic communities to train 77 activists and engage 326 citizens to develop 43 specific policy demands, which were proposed before 65 government officials. All told, between March 1st, 2019 and December 31st, 2020, the Republican group sponsored 160 photographs, 30 paintings, 21 theatrical shows, 5 short films, 3 transgender dance performances, 3 documentaries, 2 rap songs, and accompanying music videos, and 1 book. It's funny, they keep talking about these transgender dance performances. They're not mentioning the ones that were funded by a Republican group. That's the one they never seem to talk about. Meanwhile, IRI staff had, quote, identified over 170 Democratic activists who would cooperate with IRI to destabilize Bangladesh politics, they wrote. The activities were frequently attended by American diplomats, with the U.S. ambassador to Bangladesh at the time, Earl Miller, even providing the welcome speech for a 7-day art exhibit titled The Power of Art, when the IRI held an invitation-only book launch event for a book that documents the lives of LGBTI people in Bangladesh, featuring a panel discussion with LGBTI activists. A political officer and a consular officer from the U.S. Embassy were on hand as well. At the IRI's 3rd transgender dance performance in December of 2020, quote, guests from the U.S. Embassy were the Deputy Consul General and Deputy Director of the Office for Democracy, Rights, and Governance. Discussions that would guide the Institute's actions were similarly dominated by transgender voices, with 136 of the 308 community members the IRI interviewed when generating policy proposals listed as transgender/non-binary. According to the documents, these meetings generated 60 policy proposals, of which 17 related specifically to LGBTI issues. So why did transgender people make up a quarter of the IRI program's participants in a country of 173 million, where a 2022 census found they comprised just 0.007% of the population? The IRI documents suggest it's because the Institute views gay and transgender people as uniquely disruptive actors who can be deployed to manipulate political realities overseas. Wow. I'm sure they never do that domestically. I'm sure that's not the explanation for the insane focus that these ideas and issues have been given by our media and politicians over the last 10 years or so, but we'll get into that. Quote, facing discrimination and prejudice, LGBTI people tend to participate in social change activities to eventually bring changes to politics. Editors note, the IRI has claimed that this phrase did not appear in their original report. Apparently, the IRI were slowly...
I mean, that's the kind of line you like to leave unspoken if you can.
Yes, but they did not. Apparently, the IRI were slowly but surely achieving their desired changes, with the report's authors bragging that they'd successfully, quote, capacitated new and underutilized activists from marginalized communities to advocate for change with policymakers, unquote, but concluding that, quote, although IRI's beneficiaries made important strides in raising public awareness and advocating for change, more time, resources, and skills are needed to capitalize on this preliminary success to formalize changes in public attitudes and policy. The campaign appeared to take root in 2019 when IRI conducted a baseline assessment which concluded that, quote, modern forms of cultural activism are underutilized and advocacy campaigns should target national level officials to maximize impact, unquote. While the emphasis on transgender issues may fly in the face of the GOP's publicly professed values, it doesn't necessarily indicate that Republican leaders have secretly shifted their attitude towards the immutability of gender. As Mike Benz, the former State Department official who helped spearhead the ongoing push to defund U.S. aid, recently noted, I don't think that the Republicans at IRI are woke. I think you have tactical wokeness in service of statecraft. Very much so. Now, Berlatic has not been singing from the hymnal that a lot of people who have been commenting on all this have been singing from. He has been, oh, whoops, sorry about that. He has been pointing out the many arms of this octopus. Understand, this is again from him, understand the U.S. regime change complex. Think about the U.S. State Department as an octopus with 8 tentacles, all performing the same task. Some are funded by the U.S. government directly. Others channel money through foundations and charities, carrying out activities side by side with U.S. aid. Not only does cutting a tentacle off not hinder an octopus's hunting, it is capable of regenerating it back. The U.S. has conducted a limited hangout to convince the global public this problem has been solved, distracting away from the many other orgs it is using to conduct these very activities right now around the globe. Some orgs, like the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, reroute U.S. regime change efforts via local tax collection, making it even more difficult to trace it back to Washington. Others, like Team Rubicon and Glenn Beck's Nazarene Fund, do literally the exact same activities as U.S. aid, just under right conservative cover. Okay. So all of this U.S. aid stuff, according to Berlatic, who knows more about it than most people, he's suggesting it's a show to distract from all of the multifarious activities that these organizations are involved in that will continue unimpeded by this dog and pony show they're doing with U.S. aid, which in any case, they're not disbanding. They're bringing under the State Department, which is now run by an alumni of the IRI that was running transgender dance performances in Bangladesh. So now, for me, this article is kind of a smoking gun of something that many of us have long suspected. Now, this tells you how the deep state thinks, right? They are clearly stating here, and these are Republicans clearly stating that these political projects that are focused on gay and transgender issues are politically useful to destabilizing governments. Now, if you can remember this far back, nobody was really talking about transgender issues in the way that they came to speak about them as the most pressing issue of our times. And then all of a sudden, there was this. All of a sudden, that's really when this became a thing in full force, right? It was the Caitlyn Jenner publicity tour. brave Caitlyn. Nobody was really talking about this.
As go
Now,
the Kardashians, so goes America.
Yeah. Now, this, when you put it in the context of what they just described, does it seem like this is something that just organically arose from where the culture was, from where academia was? Were people demanding this? Or does it seem more like what's being described in the Gray Zone article, something that was imposed as a psychological operation from without? Starbucks, Amazon, Lockheed Martin at the price. Does this seem natural? Like, does this seem culturally organic to you? Now, I know a lot of people in our audience will already be hip to this. In fact, people in our audience, when I was first asking these questions, put me onto a lot of this history. The Congress for Cultural Freedom. If you're among those who think, well, no, that's a conspiracy theory, they've done it. They've done it. We know they did it. During the Cold War, they were funding all the abstract art that makes no sense. How did that get funding? It got funding from the CIA. Gloria Steinem, she worked for the CIA, knowingly worked for the CIA. So what do you think? They stopped doing that? Now, I want to be clear. This is not in any way, I'm not attacking gay people or gay rights or transgender people or transgender rights. That's a separate thing. What did they use it for? Why did it become the most pressing issue in a society in which people are falling further and further behind, in which economically they're becoming more and more destitute? It's to cover, and it's being very well deployed in that way right now. Now, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. Now, I can't say this was the purpose of it, to generate a reactionary right-wing backlash that would get working people so furious about these kinds of issues that they would cheer on the dismantling of the last vestiges of worker and consumer protection. But boy, it seemed to have conveniently worked out that way, right? What better way to create a reactionary backlash than to go against people's kids with ideas that are very violative of the most basic community standards of child rearing, like insisting that a book like Genderqueer, with images that are so graphic that I didn't include it in this presentation, because even in the past, when I've shown blurred out versions of this book, it got our stream demonetized. Insisting that not putting that in public schools constitutes reactionary book banning. Or articles like this in the Washington Post. Yes, kink belongs at Pride, and I want my kids to see it. Does this seem organic to you? Does this seem like something that naturally would evolve in the culture and the society? Or does it seem like a trap that was set up to bring us exactly to where we are right now? An enormous reactionary backlash in which people willingly give over the last of their power to wealthy oligarchs who promise to get the kink out of the Pride Parade and not invite children to come see it. And again, this is the image that Berlitic shared, and he is suggesting you're not actually putting an end to any of this. They're just going to use this as a smoke show to distract you from what they're actually doing.
Yeah. And, once again, I know you said it, but I'll say it again. That's not to say that pride parades don't have a place or that they're unnatural. I've seen a lot of pride parades. I never got to the point where I saw a Lockheed Martin float at a pride parade. That's the part that's inorganic. And that's the part that does feel like it was deliberately.
Pride parades started back in Stonewall. That's not what I'm talking about.
I understand.
I'm talking about what it's become.
Absolutely. Yes. I just wanted to reinforce that because, some things are important enough where you have to say them two times because once is not enough.
Fair enough.
But as for the right-wing backlash, yes, there has been a right-wing backlash that has now empowered a transparently oligarchic tech feudal order. You know what I mean? Like at the end, what purpose did this serve? You have an oligarchy that is now able to scapegoat the very people that this so-called movement was set out to empower.
Right.
Now you have Nancy Mace screaming for effect as a troll, a slur that rhymes with nanny. I can't say it on this stream. I wouldn't if I could. I don't want to. Screaming that word for effect 2 and 3 times, saying I'm doubling down and tripling down. Now someone can go up there and they can slur trans people on the House floor and not pay any price for it. Imagine Nancy Mace went on the House floor and screamed the N-word 3 times. Imagine if she screamed a Jewish slur that rhymes with bike. I won't say that either. Imagine she screamed that 3 times. She'd be expelled within hours. Now she can go up there and say that. Now they can go up there and they can actually attack the very people that this so-called movement was supposed to liberate. They've done the exact opposite. And on the world stage, this is all done. This is the ultimate irony. This is all done to disempower the left globally. What did you say there? A global Cold War. A global Cold War. NATO and the West has long used culture. I mean, this goes, forget NATO. The West generally, historically, and this goes back thousands of years. I've said this in the past. You know, Russia has been isolated culturally for 1,000 years now. I mean, they stayed Orthodox when most of Europe went Catholic. In other words, woke. Right? They remained traditional when most of the Western world went woke. And that wokeness, quote unquote, has been used to isolate them culturally from the rest of the world and to justify their isolation. And that has since, of course, been used to justify the maintenance of this unipolar world. So it's actually not done to empower the left. It's all done to actually crush the left. It's actually done to maintain
look
global
how it's
capitalism.
played out here. Look how it's played out here. At this point, look, I don't, unless you're on the inside, you don't know all the inner workings. I think I could say with some confidence at this point that the way these movements have manifested over the last decade or so are not organic in the United States. There have been intelligence service involvement aimed at discrediting the left and destabilizing workers' movements through these means. Not just this, through very divisive visions of race relations. All of this has been aimed at destabilizing the left, making it impossible for the left to organize. And if you want to look at big picture, was this an accident or was this the plan all along? Anyone could have told you, we did, that all of this, especially coming for people's kids, with ideas that are offensive to people at their core, that are completely violative of the most basic standards and mores about children and child rearing that the society has, that was bound to eventually lead to an enormous right-wing reactionary backlash where people would empower anyone who spoke out against that. And now here we are. So was that by design? Was that the plan all along? I can't say. Maybe.
Yeah, well, to the point where not only can they now trample on trans people, which they are, using them as a scapegoat, but now they can use that as a means to implement an economic agenda that they've always wanted to. Right? They're saying anyone who...
for them.
Exactly. If you're against unrestrained billionaire power, you're now woke.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. So not only have you fucked trans people, but you fucked all of us.
Yep.
Right along with it.
Yep.
All right. Let's go to some super chats and Rumble rants. Then we're going to go to the Q&A. Michael Ewan says, what percentage of the Congress critter corruption is insider trading? Is it worth talking about stocks compared to donations, revolving door, nepotism? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We have a segment on Nancy Pelosi that's ready to go. It's been shot out of the news, right? Django Blackfire says, can y'all interview Ian Carroll on the pod? He made a video saying he was wrong about the Trump land grab. Jimmy had him on a few months ago. Yeah, I know Jimmy had him on a few months back, and Russell actually met him at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. Yeah, I mean, he seemed like a nice enough guy. But, you know, did he come out? Did he do a mea culpa on the Netanyahu thing, on the land grab thing? Did he rethink that? That would be good. I haven't seen that one. I'll watch that.
I don't know. Nico's skeptical, as you will see on the intermission.
Oh, okay. There you go. For Zen's sake, Weinstein surprisingly came around on Palestine. Other than that, he's become a full MAGA grifter. When? When did he come around?
When was that?
Palestine? When was that? Fire Dancer, have an extra $1 for Russell's leg shot. If this DD doesn't work out, you should do it OnlyFans. I thought you guys were kidding about not wearing pants over there, as Harper would say. Honk.
I'm wearing shorts today.
Yeah, he's wearing.
I'm not like,
Right, exactly. Not commando in it. So is Rogan joining the Russell Brand egg hooping club? Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. Dr. Urka, great material, DD. Remember the SCOTUS ruling on Citizens United under the Obama administration? I can't help but wonder how much of that ruling affects the current financial dystopia we're experiencing. Good point. But Synapse is DEI and Marxist. Thank you.
I was doing a lot of research about the Diddy brand thing. Diddy's compound gets raided, brand converts. I found another interesting data point. Brand converts April 28th. Price of eggs go down May 15th.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Would it be racist to tell Elon to go back to Africa? Thank you. I don't think so. Do the Irish mob prefer the 38-22 9mm or there you go. Thank you, Soccer Pop. Appreciate that. Meant to say Rogan was joking about Gaza. It's a really disgusting clip if anyone feels the urge to find it. Okay, I haven't seen it. Maybe it was on that episode. I don't know. I only watched the first 15 minutes. Rogan is the Leviathan that drags all the swamp creatures into open water for you Barracuda to rip apart. Knows their desire to be cool is their weakness. Remember Joe's closest.
Yeah, it's all part of a plan. I think he's more like the way Oprah runs cover for Hollywood perverts.
Right.
Rogan runs cover for amoral oligarchic Silicon Valley douchebags.
Yeah.
He's the Oprah of Silicon Valley douchebags.
Seems like the IRI Republicans love women who carry a big stick. There you go. Thanks, Eric Rousseau. Soccer Papa, speaking of Hell's Kitchen, how true was Lorenzo Carcetera's book and movie Sleepers?
Total bullshit. Absolute and total bullshit.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what
total bullshit.
Because people would ask me about that a lot because I used to do gangster.
You could tell if you read it that it was bullshit. It was too neat. It was too pat. Real life just is not full of just the Hollywood script writing standard characters at exactly the right moment for it to all work out like that. And the priest comes in and saves at the end. It's pretty obvious if you read it. And then every reporter in New York went and dug into the court records. There was no such case as what he described. Never happened.
Killer Hit and chicks with dicks are absolutely target markets for F-22 Raptors, and my friend Brittany, who's non-binary, just bought 3 767s. Thank you, Killer Hit, and appreciate that. All right, folks, if you want to come hang out with us at the Q&A, you can do so right now by going to dudissidents.com/Rumble. That takes you directly to this very live stream that is in progress. Everybody else, we will see you back here on the main show Tuesday, February 11th. At 2 p.m., but that is our show for today. Want to thank Jake for being in the booth with us today. Thank you, Jake. Great job, as always. Want to thank our guest and our friend Kshama Sawant. Go to workerstrikeback.org to find out more, not only about her current case here, but about the Workers Strike Back organizing conference taking place February 22nd, which Russ is going to be in Seattle for, and we'll be live streaming that along with some friends of ours. So that's our business for today. If you'd like to hang out with us, dudissidents.com/Rumble. Phone lines are now open. We will break for a 5-minute intermission before we head over there. If you're hanging out for the Q&A, we'll see you in 5 minutes. If not, we'll see you Tuesday, 2 p.m. Enjoy the game tonight. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. Until we see you again, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.